There's all sorts of comments which come in, which I'm sure you'll enjoy when you're reading through. Meanwhile, Russell, thank you very much indeed for that. That's what's coming up with Russell Quirk. That's going to be next here on Talk. Well, all it remains for me to do is to say thank you very much indeed for joining me. I am going to be back. Oh, I know! Set your alarms! Well, you should be getting in, but anyway, you can set your alarms. I'm going to be joining you for Drive on Friday. That'll be from 4 o'clock on Friday. Meanwhile, all I can do is wish you a very Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a really wonderful time, and do stay with us on Talk, where, Grumpy Old Men makes an appearance. We're getting proper grumpy and proper festive. Meanwhile, Russell Quirk is next, here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good evening and welcome to what I guess is the Political Asylum Christmas Eve special. I'm Russell Quirk, sitting in for Kevin O'Sullivan. I'll be here till 10 o'clock and I'm handing over to Johnny Gould, who I guess technically is taking you through to Christmas Day. Yes, we're only 5 hours away from that. By the time we finish, we'll only be 2 hours away from Christmas Day. And so we thought it rather fitting and appropriate that, given the day and the evening that it is, that we should let you and your loved ones know where he himself is this evening. And by that, of course, I mean the big man, the man in red. I don't mean Keir Starmer, I mean Santa. So we will be tracking him across the skies via our friends at NORAD. They will be telling us exactly where he is and how many presents he has so far delivered. Last time I looked, he was about Russia bound, actually. So hopefully during the next 2 or 3 hours, we will be able to tell you exactly when he is about to land in Britain and whereabouts. And of course, the main thing, the message, of course, as ever, as every year, is make sure, children, you are asleep. Because if he lands on your roof and you're not, you might regret it. So anyway, we'll be bringing you updates throughout the show. We will be talking about some serious stuff. I've got my good friend Roger Gawalb in the studio. I'll be introducing him properly in a minute. He's got quite an intro, actually. I'll come back to that in a second, but it's the longest business card in history, but I'll come back to that in a second. So we're going to do some serious stuff around, as I said to James Max just now, UK economy, tax rises not being ruled out by Rachel Rachel Reeves. I mean, that's incredible, really, given the damage that's already been done, as we will go into in a second. Britain's shunning high streets. Now, of course, we are now in an age of online shopping, online purchases, but it looks like the footfall of shoppers visiting the high street in the lead up to Christmas is down, although you wouldn't have known it because I made the fatal mistake of Mrs. Quirk asking me to pop into Westfield. In fact, I think what she said was, could you just pop in to Westfield on your way into talk this afternoon? And I thought, well, actually, everyone's going to have done their shopping. It'll be quiet. Everybody obviously will be at home and they would have finished their purchases. How wrong was I? It was rather busy, to say the least. Tens and tens of thousands of people running around like lemmings, frankly. So I managed to get in and out largely unscathed. But so you wouldn't know that the footfall numbers were down by my experience today, but down they are, apparently. We also want to talk about the outrage that is Harrow Council fining a 5-year-old girl £1,000 for fly tipping. I kid you not. You hear these things only here on Talk. We're also going to be talking about engineers in Vietnam that were locked into their electric vehicle factory to fix a range of cars that they produced that were dangerous. Who knew that EVs were dangerous? I mean, that's a revelation, surely. Let's talk about Jeremy Clarkson's pub as well. I mean, that's only about 4 or 5 months old, and he's already moaning about it, perhaps with good reason. Just shows how difficult it is to be a pub landlord. I mean, he really has picked two professions, hasn't he? To go from being a farmer and now also to be a landlord, two of the toughest professions in Britain. But we'll talk about that in some detail. And then, of course, we want to get a little bit light-hearted because it's Christmas Eve. Let's talk about the best and the worst Christmas songs ever. I certainly have mine, my list. I'm sure you have yours. I'd like you to join in with your picks of the best and, of course, the worst. 0344 499 1000, or you can text us as ever, the word talk and then the number 87222. You can also leave a voice note message via WhatsApp on the same number, 0344 499 1000. So that's the best and worst Christmas songs, but also your best and worst Christmas presents. I've certainly got some stories from my childhood that have scarred me for life, frankly, when it comes to terrible presents, or rather disappointing presents. I've got one that is a family thing that was rather, still sticks in my mind as rather amusing. Again, I'll go into that in a bit of detail a bit later on. And Dave Chawner joins me, the comedian, so I'm sure he'll have some funny anecdotes with regard to those worst and best Christmas presents. And so on. And also property. Property's always a thing at this time of year. Not sure if you realise, actually, that Boxing Day is supposed to be the big day for property searchers. I've never been convinced of that, frankly. I think it might just be because the likes of Rightmove and Zoopla and so on, you know, the big property portals, they get this big spike on Boxing Day, not necessarily because people are looking for property, but frankly because A, they're bored, and B, they've just received a new device, whether it be a laptop, whether it be an iPad, whether it be a phone, and of course that perhaps encourages them to go on to said websites. So I'm going to be talking to Paul Champlain at about 8:30, but specifically about news that 2025 apparently is going to be the worst ever year for landlords and for renters. Now, I don't agree with that. Let's see what Paul Champlain thinks. Now, he is the landlord's friend, as I think he likes to be known, founder of Landlord Action. So let's talk to him about that. Yes, join in, 0344 499 1000 with all of those things. So, yes, we're going to start off semi-seriously and, yes, let it go downhill from there. So helping me take it downhill is Roger Gawal, as I say. Now, let me just introduce you properly, Roger. Now, I know you're a friend of the show, but I'm not sure if you've ever had this intro bestowed upon you, but I took this from your website. You ready for this? Roger is a financial entrepreneur, a lending expert, a champion for fairness throughout the consumer finance industry, public speaker, keynote conference speaker, financial commentator and pundit, TV and radio interviewee and interviewer, founder of the Campaign for Fair Finance and co-founder of fairmoney.com. Have I left anything out?
No. just geopolitics.
Oh, just geopolitics. You should change that on your website. This is where I got it. So have you got a business card that's kind of about, I don't know, 100 centimetres wide?
12 inches long, yeah.
Yeah. OK, steady. Right, OK, let's talk about some stories, shall we?
Sure.
Let's talk about the UK economy, which I know you can talk about. Obviously, this has been talked about a lot in the news over the last 2 or 3 days. I think it's fair to say that although the Conservative government didn't exactly cover itself in glory, it did have a lot of heavy lifting to do on the way out of COVID and, of course, with the energy crisis as a consequence of the invasion of Ukraine. And I know those are all historic things, but there's an aftermath, there's a lag, there's a consequence of all of those things. And I think it's fair to say that whether it was directly as a consequence of those things kind of fizzling out or whether it was government action, the Conservatives had started to show us some recovery in the economy, particularly around inflation dropping, unemployment staying pretty steady, and as a consequence also interest rates starting to come down, which of course they have twice over the last few months. Lo and behold, Labour get into government on July the 4th, then they have a budget on October the 30th, and it's, again, literally been downhill all the way in terms of the numbers. So GDP has shrunk for the last 2 months running. We've seen 0 GDP growth in the previous quarter. Business is getting very jittery when it comes to investing and employing, and so on and so on and so on. And Roger, it therefore really surprises me that we hear, I mean, in the Times particularly reported, that Rachel Reeves and the Prime Minister have still failed to rule out more tax rises, even though recession fears are growing. I mean, have they learnt nothing over the last few months?
I think you're giving credit where it's not due. The Tories did not bring down inflation. Mm-hmm. They supported...
I did say even if it was as a consequence of government handling. But yeah, go on.
They supported Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, in his 14 interest rate rises, which most economists will tell you, in fact, increased and prolonged inflation, because we didn't have consumer-driven inflation. We had a cost of living crisis.
Well, it was supplier-driven.
Yeah.
Energy cost-driven.
Well, things over which you and I have got no control, Russell.
Yeah.
So making money more expensive for us is about the stupidest thing that you can do. So the Tories are actually responsible for inflation lasting longer and being higher than it ever needed to be. Now, Labour is just picking that up. And on that second point, you're absolutely correct. I mean, you know, they couldn't do anything more counterintuitive and counterproductive than all of the different tax rises and all of the measures that they've introduced recently. The mind boggles. So
do we buy the Rachel Reeves line that, you know, it doesn't matter what she's done because she hasn't affected working people? Now, can I just paraphrase? I think what the Labour government mean by working people is specifically the public sector. Now, if you were worried about working people, you would also be worried about those working people that own small businesses, which actually employ about 16 million people in Britain. But of course, slapping on a 1.2% increase in employers' national insurance, you know, not only is that then to the detriment of those individuals that run those businesses, and also to charities, and we should come back to that, because there was news today actually that charities are going to have to cough up a total of 1.4 billion, with a B, pounds each year now as a consequence of Rachel Reeves introducing an increase in employers' national insurance. So more of your money that goes to charity now will be going to the government. So it's not right to say that the working person has been protected by this budget, because of course all it means is that employers now are going to pull their belts in, they're going to expand less, invest less, and any pay rise in the private sector presumably now will be at a lower percentage rate than it otherwise would have been.
Well, you're answering the question for me, but you're absolutely right. I wish more people would say that. I mean, Labour really does seem to think that working people are public sector employees and nobody else. And to say that Rachel Reeves and her measures have not affected ordinary working British working people is just ridiculous. I mean, it just goes along with so much more of the madness that we're hearing recently.
And what about farmers? Are they ordinary working people?
Of course.
Of course they are.
Of course.
I'm teasing. I mean, it's. I mean, what Labour have perfected, it seems, is the ultimate in gaslighting, which is
Absolutely. They've beat the Tories at it, which is really hard to do.
I mean, award-winning stuff, right?
Award-winning.
Olympic, top of the podium.
Oscar-winning gaslighting, like never before.
But is it just gaslighting, or is it that they genuinely have this...
They believe it themselves.
Yeah, this narrative that they believe. and of course, in the run-up to the election and since, all Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have talked about is growth, 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 growth. The problem is, I think they believe that they believe in growth.
It's Christmas time.
But they don't know...
Let's be generous.
Well, go on.
None of these people has ever worked a day in their life at a real job.
Yeah.
They've never had to graft to make wages for the end of the month, have they? Look at... I mean, it's the most unqualified front bench you've ever seen to run the economy of Britain. I mean, Sunak did pretty well by appointing Bates Motel Hunt, who had never spent 24 hours in his life in any financial institution, bank, or money company.
Yeah.
But this even beats that. I mean, they've won on all counts, as you say. So, I mean, the measures they're taking are just insane. And one just wonders why. I get so many messages from followers saying, Dr. Roger, wake up and smell the coffee. No one can be this stupid. This is a conspiracy. It's the Jews. It's the Muslims. It's the World Economic Forum in Davos. It's Russia. It's Iran.
You think strings are being pulled and so on. No. I think it's not just incompetence. I think it's as you say, there's no experience. So that they being in opposition and throwing political rocks is a really easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And you can play out your ideological fantasies all if you like, because like you did in sixth form, right? Which is everyone should be equal.
Absolutely.
Everyone should be equal. Rich should be taxed at 90%, of course, because then they believe that there's this transfer of wealth, that the people that are taxed at 90% are going to carry on working hard and being wealthy.
Yeah, they're going to really,
And of course, train drivers should be paid £100,000 a year. Why not? I mean, God, they have to work 3 days a week, for goodness sake, these people. Anyway, so it is...
your point, if I may, your point is well taken, it's Christmas. Give them credit. I think they actually believe this stuff.
Yeah, so they do. So, but now, does Rachel Reeves now, though, think, well, OK, so even the left-wing media, even the Independent, which is not independent, by the way, and the Guardian and the Mirror are saying, hang on a sec, this now isn't looking very good. You know, inflation's starting to spike, GDP is frozen, is going to reduce in terms of the economy shrinking. It is actually looking, I'm afraid, quite likely that we enter technical recession somewhere
This ain't
around.
what we said was going to happen.
Yeah. And of course, there's only so long you can blame a fictitious £22 billion black hole.
And legacy.
That the Office of Budget Responsibility actually can't find. How do they square, and I'm not asking you to speak for the Labour Party, because I bet you can't do that and wouldn't want to, but how are they going to square this circle in a year's time when we're in recession? Are they still going to keep blaming the Conservatives?
I can speak for each of the parties. They each have their points. You know, I'm not 100%. And you're saying in a year's time, are they going to be able to square this? No, of course not, because, I mean, it's just all counterintuitive. I mean, there is no black hole. The black hole is well, at least I'm pretty sure there isn't. It's like Jeremy Hunt's black hole 3 Novembers ago.
Yeah.
When we had £55 billion black hole, which had to be filled within days. So we had 25 billion of tax rises in stealth taxes. And then the other 30, which is going to be cuts in services, military, police, schools, etc., NHS, disappeared, has never been heard of again. There wasn't a... And people in think tanks said, you know, if you use the formulas that Fishy Rishi and Bates Motel used when they were in office and Rishi was Chancellor, we'd actually have a £15 billion surplus today.
Yeah, well, and if we didn't keep spending money on crazy net zero projects and giving £11 billion away to other countries for climate change mitigation.
And chess sets in public parks.
Yeah, that as well. And, subsidising councils that insist on painting rainbow crossings across the street, and so on and so on and so on. I did a video, actually, a few weeks ago where I think I found £100 billion in our £1 trillion budget that doesn't need to be spent and actually could go back into the budget. So if you did away with foreign aid, if you did away with the nonsense climate capture stuff that Ed Miliband, of course, is pushing and pushing, even though his friend Dale Vince, who's a massive climate nutcase in my opinion, he doesn't believe in it. So if Dale Vince doesn't believe in it, then you got to question whether it's real or not.
Yeah.
So if you saved all of that stuff, you know, particularly the hobby horse net zero rubbish, which
100 billion, all of it.
Well, yeah, 100 billion, and also then don't even get me onto asylum, hotels, and the fact that the average illegal immigrant costs about £400,000 during their lifetime in Britain. Add it all up, it's about £100 billion a year. So anyway, look, let's come back after the break and talk about some more formal news before we get a little bit more light-hearted. Let's talk about Britain's shunning the high streets, which, as I say, is not a reflection of my experience earlier on, that's for sure. But we'll be back after this break. I'm Russell Quirk, he's Roger Gould, and this is Talk. Back soon.
Heard from young people saying they can't afford the rail tickets to get to see their families.
The rail fares, well, we've just nationalised the railways. The very first
but the fares aren't coming down, are they?
So they will once the franchises return to public ownership, so that's a pretty big
That
bold
is not my understanding, but OK, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, I'm Russell Quirk, this is Talk, I'm here till 10 o'clock, still joined by Roger Gould. Roger, before we move on to Britain's high streets and the fact that the Daily Mail say that the high street is being shunned in the run-up to Christmas, albeit that that story presumably was written and published yesterday, and a lot of people will be shopping today, particularly men, because of course all men only shop on Christmas Eve. We all know that. Can we just talk about Keir Starmer's speech? Now, I know this has been much talked about over the last 24 hours, but Keir Starmer did grace us with a Christmas message, of course. Let's just dissect it, right? Because it was only about a minute long, because obviously he was busy trying to get off on holiday.
Yeah.
Because it's been days since he's been on a plane, Keir Starmer, and I think he's got some kind of thing where he has to be on a plane every couple of weeks. He does. Yeah, if he's back in Britain for too long, I think. Well, maybe because he knows he's probably going to be chased by pensioners or farmers at some point. He said, it is a time to remind ourselves of what's really important. Okay, and I'm thinking, heating for pensioners, the existence of farms for food, because that's pretty important, isn't it? Rather than solar panels, jobs via businesses. I mean, they're pretty important, I think. And the economy, as we just talked about, which is why I thought we should touch on this. The economy is pretty important too.
And maybe foreign relations?
Foreign relations, yeah, with the incoming president of the United States. Yeah, that would be quite a good thing. So, I mean, obviously he doesn't write this. It's presumably put in front of him and he polishes it and says, yeah, that's great, that'll do. He obviously delivered it as if he was kind of Pinocchio. And when I say that, I mean not just as a liar, but I mean as a wooden doll. In that he has absolutely no charisma and no character whatsoever. But how does a man that has ruined the lives of pensioners, waspy women, farmers, business people and so on, how does he look at the camera and say, it's a time to remind ourselves of what's really important, without thinking about the irony of the statement?
Well, the same as him looking at the camera and saying, the future is going to be good because of the great things that we're doing now, with all the destructive measures they've taken. I just think that it's delusional.
Well, he says looking forward to a better, brighter future. I thought, he's about to resign. Maybe that's what I'm about to say. And listen what else he said. I'd like to particularly thank those serving others. In other words, this is my contention, the public sector, basically. Because he talked about, and look, I take nothing away from the armed forces and from the NHS. Of course they should be thanked. But how about thanking the private sector? The private sector, by the way, Keir Starmer, are the ones that pay the tax, that pay for the public sector. How about thanking the builders and the shop assistants and the entrepreneurs and the wealth creators, the 16 million employees of SME businesses across Britain that have toiled and struggled during 2024, particularly the lesser part, thanks to you. And as I said just now, coming back to the charities point, charities in Britain do an amazing job. They fill a gap that they shouldn't, frankly, have to fill. And yet they now face this £1.4 billion additional bill for national insurance as an employer, and they haven't been exempted from that. How do you feel about that?
I say the mind boggles. I don't know how he can say these things, and I think the examples you just given, I think it's just dreadful, these measures that have been taken. And I'm not surprised that some council takes it upon itself to find a 5-year-old girl $1 grand.
Well, they need the money.
Because they need the money. But it's the madness which is seeping into everything.
Yeah, so 5-year-olds, look out. If you drop a sweet wrapper on the pavement...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that later.
We released a murderer this morning, so we've got a cell for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally... he says, my thoughts are with those that are lonely and having a tough time. Seriously? Keir Starmer? Yeah, no, but of course. But hang on a sec. What about the people that are having an even tougher time, both economically, but also freezing pensioners? And I know we've talked about this time and time again, but Labour's own data says that this winter, which we're now rapidly moving into, where temperatures might drop in certain parts of the UK to -5, -10, those numbers that were published by Labour a year or two ago, when they were trying to suggest that the Conservatives were going to take away the winter fuel allowance, they cited maybe 4,000 pensioners that would die of cold.
Yeah.
In Britain in 2024. And knowing this, he's withdrawn the winter fuel allowance, but has the audacity to say, my thoughts are with those that are lonely and having a tough time. I mean, like freezing pensioners, not just the lonely, but the cold and freezing ones. I mean, the brass neck of this man, is he a psychopath, do we think? Seriously?
I don't know. I don't know that
he's got no conscience.
I don't know that I'd label him that strongly, but I mean, certainly Labour is even further out of touch with the British people than the Tories were.
Which is ironic, given that the Labour Party is supposed to be the party of the working class. Let's talk about high streets. So I don't know what your view of this is. Obviously, look, you're a money man, you're a financial expert, so you'll have an opinion on this, I'm sure. Beleaguered high streets. So high streets, presumably rents are going up to shop owners, business rates go up. Yeah, and now the cost of employing people, as we just said, by 1.2%, so that's going to cost billions and billions of pounds, because that measure was, I think, due to raise £20 billion. So basically, let's just be really clear for those that are a bit slow at the back. When Rachel Reeves says that she's raising £20 billion in tax through employers' national insurance. What she actually means is that businesses across Britain are going to pay another £20 billion, and that has to come from somewhere. Often that comes in the increased cost of goods and services. It'll come in the cost to employees of not having sufficient pay rises and so on. And maybe this is another reason why the Daily Mail are reporting that about 5% less people are going to the shops.
Yes.
Which is a bit concerning, isn't it? If you are a shopkeeper, or particularly if you're a big corporate that owns lots and lots of shops, and you've got those overheads multiplied by, let's say, 100 Sainsbury's stores or Marks and Spencer stores, or, you know, whatever they might be, this is a big concern.
You don't see it out there, as you said, but I mean, it looks like it's still very, very busy, but that 5% must have seeped in there and be eating away.
Well, that's what they're saying.
At growth, GDP, and everything else. It's insane. It's just, as I said, it's just one measure after another. Every day I'm surprised by something. Well, I'm not surprised. Every day there's something new, and I don't know what they're playing at.
Let me just read this from the Daily Mail. The number of shoppers hitting the shops was 5.3% lower on December the 23rd than the same day last year. Retailers had hoped for a long-awaited sales bonanza on Monday, expected to be this year's peak Christmas shopping day, and footfall did surge, but not by as much as expected, seemingly. So, yeah, a bit of a concern. I guess that the other side of this, we should say for balance, is that online shopping obviously dominates more and more and more, not just at Christmas, but throughout the year.
We had that last year on December 23rd, so...
Yeah, so but it may be the total numbers when we come out the other side of Christmas might look better when you add back in the whole online thing. Let's talk about 5-year-old girls being fined for fly tipping, shall we? So this is reported in The Sun today. This is absolutely astonishing.
What is it that she threw away?
Well, she didn't. So actually what happened was, and the girl and her parents were anonymous and I think understandably, because obviously they'd rather not reveal who they are, but let me just read you this. So a family has been left outraged after a girl aged 5 was slapped with a £1,000 fine and threatened with a court appearance for fly tipping. Harrow Council's environmental enforcement team told the schoolgirl's father that they caught her, I'll say that again, they caught her committing the act in North London. She's 5, Roger. She's 5. The girl's father strongly refuted the allegation that this was a deliberate act and blasted it as absurd. The council sent a letter on November the 20th saying that the child was witnessed by a uniformed officer committing the offence of fly tipping. So this isn't littering. This is, you know, taking your household goods that you don't want anymore and chucking them in a ditch down a country lane, right? So that's effectively what they've accused her of. And they said in the letter they're about to instruct the council's legal team to start court proceedings against her. And the letter also, bear in mind, she's 5 years under the criminal age of responsibility.
I can't picture it. It's wonderful.
So presumably at this point they know she's 5, right? I imagine, right? So
Daddy, what does he mean?
Daddy, yeah. Well, she can't even read the letter, bless her, probably, can she? Particularly with educational standards in Britain. Anyway, so they say they're going to instruct the council legal team to start court proceedings. The letter also warned that the youngster will face a conviction which carries a maximum penalty of £2,500. This is absolutely astonishing. But then, here's the twist. It then since came to light that no officer actually saw it, but instead simply saw parcel packaging with the girl's name on it on a street just away from her home address.
Oh, my goodness.
Harrow Council, hang your heads in shame.
Oh, my goodness.
So, now, I should try and see here. Oh, yeah, there is a bit of a statement.
Just a minute. There's 68 million people right now throwing packaging with their names and whatever on it all over the place. It's Christmas.
Well, I think your point is well made, Roger, which is this is a terribly sinister...
This was Santa punishing her as he said he would if she didn't behave.
Well, maybe she wasn't asleep.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll come back to that in a second when we track where he is in a sec. So Harrow...
No, this is elves at work, there's no doubt.
Could be. Harrow Council leader, Councillor Paul Osborne, added, I'd like to find a child who could afford to pay a £1,000 fine at 5 years old. Obviously, this is totally unacceptable, and we will look into it and any of these accusations.
Daddy, what's £1,000?
Yeah, no, exactly. So I'm just looking to see if there's any kind of rebuttal here. Not really, to be honest, in terms of an apology. If there is an apology from Harrow Council, I'll read it to you later if I can find it. But so far, it doesn't appear that there is one.
Can't we find some honor or dishonor for the Harrow Council employee who did this?
Well, I guess, look, it'll be a semi-senior officer in the enforcement department who is certainly overzealous, over-promoted, I would suggest, and loves a bit of power. My experience as a councillor, as I was for 8 years, I'm afraid, is that council officers love a bit of power. Maybe that's why some of them want to be council officers, because, yes, look, it seems that they like exerting power over toddlers that haven't fly tipped. I mean, whatever next?
I can't imagine.
This is real. This happened.
I can't. It's probably a fine for sticking out one's tongue at another child during recess.
Well, yeah. Hang on. I'm just being told that they're actually
at the door.
Yeah, no, they're at the door. Yeah, there is actually a statement. Right, the contractor. APCOA, or APCOA, I don't know if that's an acronym or not, but the contractor used by the council to issue fixed penalty notices said, we have already contacted the family concerned to apologise. Oh, and we confirm that the FPN has been cancelled. Oh, thanks. Yeah. That's great to know.
APCOA is a giant parking ticket company.
Yeah, so do you think that's part of the problem then, that because they're outsourcing this, and look, I love a bit of private sector.
So it's not the council, it's APCOA.
Well, it is the council, they have to take responsibility, but the private sector enforcement company, so that they're a bit of a kind of, you know, what we would know as a Serco or a G4.
Automobile Parking Company of America, so we know who to blame.
Oh, wow, it's your lot.
Yep.
Oh, right, OK. Do you think there's too much of this then? Do you think there's too much private sector interference in council business?
Totally. Too much. APCOA runs this. The bigger one is Capita. In Westminster, you park wrongly and you get Capita.
Well, and Serco, of course, Serco have been oft criticised for being
all these big franchisees
at times not very efficient. OK, let me know what you think about this. If you're a 5-year-old and you've been served a notice by a council for fly tipping, let us know. 03444 499 1000.
She should sue.
Can she at 5 years old?
Let's do something. Yes, let's look into this.
Okay.
Seriously, let's get a lawsuit going.
We get a class action going, or a group litigation order, as it is.
Emotional distress in America. She can get a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm being told by Sarah you can sue at any age. So
my whole future is tainted by this.
Okay, well, we'll
get millions.
We'll leave Roger's contact details so that anyone that has a 5-year-old that needs to sue can. Yes, Sarah's just saying you can be sued at any age. However, you cannot be held responsible for debt that you owe until the age of 18.
That's right.
You can sue someone if you are under 18 years old, but you will need a litigation friend, that would be you, Roger, to issue and conduct court proceedings on your behalf. You happy to do this?
Sure.
Fantastic. Look, we are ever helpful, aren't we? Back after this. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Now, I've often talked about the perils of electric vehicles. I'm not a fan for a bunch of reasons, really. A, I think they're unnecessary from the point of view of this climate hoax thing going on, but let's not get too embroiled in that. Let's talk about the fact that EVs don't really work very well on the basis that they're expensive, they depreciate, they're very, very expensive to insure. If you damage them and the battery, you have to pay a fortune to replace them. And I know I'm annoying every Porsche, Macan, Taycan and Tesla owner out there, but it's just a fact, isn't it? Let's be honest. Electric cars are just kind of Kenwood mixers with wheels. Pointless, waste of time, impractical, and not doing anything in terms of the purpose for which they were intended. And it seems also that there is a division of Tata, which of course owns Jaguar Land Rover, that would rather agree with me, because before a certain brand of Tata car even left the Vietnamese factory in which they are built in Hanoi, I think, it was deemed that they weren't safe enough to leave. And the response by the Tata-owned company was to lock the engineers in the factory until they fixed the problem. Imagine if we'd done that in the good old days of British Leyland. Right? Can you imagine? Maybe Britain would still have a car industry, everybody. That'd be great, wouldn't it? I mean, you might still be driving around in Austin Allegros and Marinas. I jest, of course, but this is incredible, isn't it? I mean, on two levels. A, it kind of, I mean, look, it's anecdotal, it's one story. It rather demonstrates that these things, and these things actually, they did release some, and they had all sorts of accidents and incidents. So it kind of demonstrates my point, I think, about EVs. But it's a bit of a dramatic response, do you think, by the company to lock the engineers in and say, well, you better fix this and you're not going to be... You remember when teachers used to say to you at school, you're not leaving, you're not going home until you've finished your work. It's the kind of automotive equivalent of that.
It's not the Harvard Business School management formula that we're used to, no.
No, it's not. And I'm not sure if it's worked, although there's a number of people here that said that they left their job because they were uncomfortable with the way that the project was being managed. Yeah, no kidding. Quite incredible. And bearing in mind, this is a subsidiary. It's a business that is owned by the same people as Jaguar Land Rover. I mean, for the likes of Jaguar in particular, the bad news keeps coming, doesn't it? I mean, they don't seem to be getting anything right. Did you see the Jaguar car launch, the prototype, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
That they've decided to kind of cover in a kind of shroud of wokeness. That's not going to do them any favours.
No,
so
it isn't.
I worry now for Jaguar Land Rover's future. I mean, they make some brilliant cars, actually, in their Land Rover Discovery, their Range Rover, and so on. But it seems like other elements of the business, and I say this with all puns intended, the wheels might be falling off.
I think so. I mean, there's always been a history. Range Rovers, at one point, I remember one warranty firm declaring they had more claims on Range Rovers than any car, any other.
But going back a while, right? Because then they got owned by BMW, and I think they became better.
Yeah.
The biggest problem now, and I say this as a former Land Rover Discovery owner, particularly where I live in Essex, where one gets stolen about every 18 seconds.
You're an Essex boy.
I am an Essex boy, yes. I'm what did someone call me the other day? A gobby Essex estate agent, and I thought that summed me up absolutely perfectly. That's exactly what I am, and somehow they let me do this stuff. Yeah. The biggest problem is insurance premiums. So there are parts of the country, particularly where I live, where there's a predominance of these things getting stolen. I know we're digressing a bit here, but where, you know, insurance premiums went from £1,000 a year to £5,000 to £20,000, and now there's a lot of insurance companies saying they won't insure them. Land Rover's response to that, apparently, some months back, was to introduce their own insurance company, who then decided that in certain cases there were still areas that they themselves wouldn't even insure their own product in. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it?
Wow.
Absolutely incredible. So, electric vehicles in Vietnam having problems, and I'm not quite sure if that problem's been resolved, but there was certainly some problems serious enough for those engineers to be told to stay where they are until they fixed it. I mean, tragically, actually, all joking aside, apparently there were some issues actually, particularly in the US with this particular brand of car, where cars were somehow kind of almost ending up with a life of their own and crashing, and people were losing their lives. So look, on the other side of this, obviously a very, very serious matter.
Doing their own thing.
Yes, and then we get on, I guess, not suggesting these are self-driving cars, but we get onto that whole fable, that fictitious thing of self-driving cars. I don't know if you've been to California in the last 2 or 3 years. I have, and every time I go, over the last 4 or 5 years, actually, there's always these self-driving cars testing. They seem to test and test and test, but never actually get sanctioned as a self-driving, driverless cars. I mean, I don't know why that is, but anyway. So, OK. Yes, and talking of cars, Ed Miliband, let's talk about his quest to get us to net zero. Yes, I know. Roger's doing some strange musical stuff here. Here we go again. And the fact, I think what you mean is this the Ed Miliband in front of the windmills playing his guitar.
Blowing in the wind.
Blowing in the wind. I mean,
that's exactly what he's doing.
I wish he would blow away in the wind, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So look, one would imagine that hybrid cars, which are this combination of fossil fuel and electric...
I've driven one for years.
You have? You have one now?
I had one for... must be 15 years now.
So for the benefit of the audience, explain what a hybrid is, in effect.
So it is an electric motor in a petrol engine car with an automatic switch that takes the car between the two for power, depending on a whole algorithm of conditions. You have nothing to do with it. It just switches, a little light comes on and off on the display.
Depending on speed or?
Everything. Speed, air temperature, road conditions.
How you drive?
Yeah, a million things, you know. It switches back and forth, and in the end, it does get you some really good mileage. So I've got about 38.5 miles per gallon on my car.
OK. So they're better for the environment.
Better for the environment, save you a lot of money on petrol.
Ed Miliband wants to ban them.
Of course. They've got great pickup and speed. I mean, there's no difference. They're just great.
Yeah. So let me read you this. So some of Britain's best-selling hybrid cars could be banned from sale from 2030. That's only 5 years away. Under strict net zero proposals reportedly being considered by ministers, in other words, being pushed by Ed Miliband, the climate junkie. The government has suggested imposing tough CO2 emission limits on new hybrid vehicles, meaning popular models from brands like Range Rover, Ford, VW and Nissan may no longer meet the standards. Now, this, of course, is on top of the fact that the government has already imposed targets and restrictions on manufacturers that they have to produce and sell a high enough percentage of electric vehicles as a total of their output.
The whole thing's a scam.
Well, and it is a scam, and actually what's now happening is the manufacturers are saying, look, we can't sell that number of EVs. So it's all very well being dictated to that 30, 40, 50% in the future of our output has to be electric vehicles. But guess what? Customers don't want them. Not to that extent, particularly when they're depreciating by 30, 40% a year.
So many, if you just think about it, of these appalling policies that nobody can understand why a party such as Labour, which actually has a chance to make this country great again, if you will, and
I've heard that somewhere.
And reverse some of the nonsense that the Tories have laid on us in the last 14 years, and instead is going in directly the opposite direction. And that's why I hear that Ed Miliband has organized, there are secret meetings going on between him and Starmer and the rest, and Stop Oil. Because the Labour people are all trying to learn how to glue themselves to their seats.
They'll have to, come 2029. New Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, so she's a new entry, because obviously Louise Haigh, the previous one, fell on her sword because... because she was convicted of fraud. I mean, again, this is a government that's only 5.5 months old. Heidi Alexander has defended the proposals to get rid of more efficient hybrid cars. Yes, I said that right. Has defended the proposals for the government to get rid of these more fuel-efficient cars, saying that the government, drivers are already embracing EVs faster than ever. Well, not really.
Not really.
With 1 in 4 new cars sold in November electric. No, that'll be 1 in 4 new cars produced is electric, not sold, because most of them hiding, are sitting in fields, I suspect, unsold. Again, depreciation, insurance, and fires. They catch light, don't they?
Yeah.
EVs sometimes. That should get the phones ringing. 03444 499 1000, by the way, if you disagree with me. If you're an absolute EV car lover, do let me know. By all means, call and defend your position.
Tell us what you like.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying there's no place for EVs. What I'm saying is that we should not be a country, we should not be a society of drivers that are told the mechanism by which our cars should be fuelled. It probably won't be news to you that, I'm not an EV lover. I'm a bit of a classic car guy. I like old gas-guzzling cars, and if they do 20 to the gallon, good. That's fine by me. And,
if I may, what you said, they aren't doing what they were invented to do.
Listen to this. Mike Hawkes, who is the sensible chief executive of the Society for Motor Manufacturers and Traders, said, sorry, it's Christmas Eve, he called for urgent clarity, warning that car makers are already under immense pressure to meet zero-emission targets. And then he says, the automotive industry welcomes government's review, but this has cost manufacturers already £4 billion in extra discounting just to get the current EV cars out the door. Well, that's completely unsustainable.
Wow.
I mean, the Labour government have already broken the car industry in Britain once. They did that in the 1970s. It appears that they want to break the resurgence of the British car manufacturing industry all over again. Let me know what you think. 0344
get a lot of money from China and elsewhere.
Yes, indeed. Look, when we come back, we're going to talk about Jeremy Clarkson's pub. He's not having a lot of luck with it, it seems. I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk.
Heard from young people saying they can't afford the rail tickets to get to see their families.
The rail fares, well, we've just nationalised the railways. The very first
but the
bill
fares
that
aren't
went
coming
through
down,
was,
are they?
No, they will once the franchises return to public ownership, so that's a pretty big
That
bold
is not my understanding,
thing
but
that
OK, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm Russell Quirk in for Kevin O'Sullivan. This is the Christmas Eve political asylum. It's 7 minutes to 8. Still joined by Roger Gould, but I think we're in trouble, Roger. We've got a call on electric cars. Carly from Somerset. Yeah, I think Carly wants to tell us off. Do you, Carly?
Hi, Russell.
Hello.
Right.
Are you in an electric car now?
I am. So we're in a Kia e-Niro.
What?
Had it since a Kia e-Niro.
A Kia e-Niro?
Yes.
Where do they get these names from?
What do you not like about the name?
Well, it sounds like a Roman emperor that did, horrible things.
Probably just because you're used to Fiesta. Fiesta is, like a festival.
That's a whole different thing. That's also something else from the past. But anyway, go on. Tell us about electric cars and why you think they're so brilliant.
Yeah, so it angers me sometimes when I hear people talking about them. And like you said about catching on fire and various different things, and it's just so untrue.
Well, they do.
Drove an electric car now since 2022. And it's absolutely fantastic.
Hang on,
I'll give you the pros,
Carly,
I'll
it's
give you the
making
cons.
it's making a bit of a noise. Is it something
Sorry,
broken?
1 second.
Something
2
broken?
seconds. 2 seconds.
Go on.
You need to be quiet. So basically, we're what now? 2024. So we've had this for 2.5 years. I'm due to change in April.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going for an electric car. Benefits to me, so benefit in kind from a tax point of view, the government needs to get the new car registrations up to make electric cars affordable. Super expensive from a new point of view for a lot of makes. We have got new entrants to the market, such as BYD. BYD, massive in China. They've just overtaken VW for new car registrations. We've now in Somerset got them in all different locations. You've got BYD Taunton, BYD...
Sorry, what's BYD, Carly?
Have you not heard of BYD?
No, not if it's an electric car thing.
Yeah, BYD have just overtaken VW for registration.
Well, BYD is a brand, is it?
Yeah, so it stands for Build Your Dreams.
What? Sorry, is this a wind-up? Is this a Christmas Eve wind-up? So, sorry, there's a make of car called Build Your Dreams.
Seriously, there's going to be new entrants that come into the UK market that are here now. So in various different locations now, where I'm at in Somerset, we've got BYD Taunton, we've got BYD Plymouth, so they're physical locations.
Do you know what I think BYD might stand for? Is Beware Your Depreciation.
Oh, Russell, you're going to say that, aren't you? You're coming from a negative point of view.
Do you work for BYD, Carly? Be honest.
No, not at all.
Go on.
What angers me is the fact that electric cars, from an affordability point of view, apart from the list price at new, the actual running costs of them are super, super cheap.
But can I give you an example? I've got a 1971 car. Your car is, 4 years old. The carbon footprint of my car is much less than yours over its life.
Where are you getting that information from? But that's what you will do.
No, because it's obvious, isn't it? If you put together a car using rubber and metal and glass, and it lasts for 60 years, as mine has, nearly, then per year, it's got a much lower carbon footprint than yours, where you're going to have to throw the battery away in a couple of years.
But if you look at the effect that's going to be long-term, so you're not going to be able to replace all the parts for a 1971 car.
Oh, I do, and I have to do so frequently, actually.
Now, it's not going to last for, a huge amount of time.
No, but it has. It's
electric has to be here. From an environmental point of view,
why?
Electric has to be here.
Why?
For emissions for the planet.
Hang on, but with the greatest respect, Carly, I know it's Christmas, I don't want to fall out with you, but do you really think that you driving around an electric car is going to save the planet? Come on.
With regard to emissions, it will make a massive difference.
What about China, the United States and India that are still building coal-fired power stations and ignoring...
We can only do what we can only do.
Saving the next year.
Hang on. So, Carly, just one sec. Sorry to interrupt. Roger just wants to make a point.
Those countries pumping out more in one day than they're all going to do in a year.
Wow, there you go. So I think, look, I understand why people think that electric cars are important, and I also kind of understand the running cost on a day-to-day basis benefit. But when it comes now to the fact that they are going to start being taxed, because of course the government can't not tax electric vehicles if they become the dominant mode of transport, because otherwise they lose lots and lots of tax revenue. They do depreciate. I know not every car that's electric does, but the biggest depreciating cars in Britain right now are all electric. And the insurance cost of electric cars is massive. And also, I mean, if I want to go on a long journey, let's say I want to go and see my mate Chris up in Scotland, how many times have I got to stop on the way?
Yeah, that's the only time it's expensive. The reason why electric cars, from a list point of view, are expensive now because of research and development. Do you know that there's profit warnings with VW, with all different brands out there right now, major manufacturers, including Nissan? There's profit warnings with them. And the reason being that there's entrants that are coming in, like BYD, who the technology is advanced. These companies have been around for years and years.
No, but Carly, the profit warnings, I mean, I saw that in the press, I think, yesterday, where now we might have car manufacturers merging. They're having to, because they can't economically sustain the diktat from Britain and the EU in terms of the amount of electric vehicles they have to produce, because they're producing more than is demand from the consumer. Look, Carly, I've got to go. Look, fair points, and I know you're a big advocate and you made a good case. I just made a better one. Back after this. Oh, sorry, I've just been told. Sorry, I'm misbehaving. I've got a few seconds to go, so I shouldn't have cut Carly off in her prime there. But oh, she's there. Carly, sorry, come back. Are you still there? Sorry, I went too early. No comment. Yeah, no, I think I make a better case, don't you?
Oh, wait, you don't know from an affordability point of view what's coming, and if you've never driven one, then you can't properly. Oh no, I have.
I drove a Porsche Taycan, and it was super quick, but soulless. It was literally like having a kind of kitchen appliance with pedals and wheels. Not great at all, really. So anyway, Carly, again, for the second time, thank you. Right, OK, we will be back after the news. Roger, sticking around for a little while, hopefully, maybe?
Sure, if you like.
See you after this. I'm Russell Quirk, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
OK, I'm back just after 8 o'clock. Russell Quirk here on the Christmas Eve political asylum. Roger Gould has very kindly said that he's going to hang around for another 10 or 15 minutes, particularly because I want to know what his best and worst Christmas presents were. And we're also going to find out Dave Chawner's best and worst. So Dave Chawner is a renowned comedian that I've known for a while. Dave, thanks for joining us. Delighted that you are.
Thank you, mate. I will slip you that fiver for that wonderful introduction.
I think such a big up is worth a little bit more than that, mate. But
especially the way my career's going, yeah, absolutely.
Oh dear. Look, I'm sure it's only on the up. Look, let's talk about Christmas presents. This is a wonderfully exciting time. I think less so as you get older. I think it's fair to say.
100%.
Don't you think? I mean, when you're a kid, you kind of get excited. You generally get what you want, hopefully most of the time. And of course, as you get to my ripe old age, you know, you're lucky if you get something in the way of the socks that you want that actually you might wear at some point. So it brought me this morning, Sarah and I, the producer here, to thinking, well, actually, I wonder what, yes, the best Christmas presents are from the point of view of the people listening to this show, but also, of course, the worst. Now, can I start? And I'm intrigued as to what Roger's going to tell us in terms of his worst Christmas presents. So let me tell you my experience, right? So back in 1979, yes, I was around, believe it or not, I had been born. There was a particularly compelling go-to toy that everybody wanted. I don't know if we've got a picture of it actually, but it was called the Big Track. Those of you at a certain age will remember this. This was the absolute must-have toy. You remember that film Jingle All the Way, where Arnold Schwarzenegger runs around trying to find a particular present that is in very, very short supply? Well, this is a bit like that. So I really, really wanted one. Anyway, I was, at the time, I think I was an 11 or 12-year-old, the son of divorced parents, and I was quite excited about this whole Big Track thing. And lo and behold, on Christmas morning, I get a Big Track. Fantastic. How exciting. The problem is, the next day when I went to see my dad, who obviously lived separately by way of the virtue of them being divorced, guess what I got? Another Big Track. So I ended up with two identical presents. So it meant that the one benefit you get as a kid of divorced parents is that you get two presents at Christmas, you get two presents at birthday. I got the same bloody one. So that was my disappointing experience of Christmas presents, albeit back in 1979. Probably wouldn't happen now, would it, given the choice of presents? Roger, what's yours?
I was given a gift one Christmas by somebody I knew pretty well, so I was quite surprised. They gifted me a letter with a card in it which said that they had made a donation to a shelter for some Cambodian animal. I can't even remember what it was.
And who's this from? Someone that didn't like you?
Yeah, some people I barely knew. Do you remember that strange-looking thing that was around in Wuhan and COVID, that polygooble blah blah?
Well, hang on. They
an animal.
Gave a donation to a COVID-inducing bat.
No. They gave a donation to a shelter for COVID-inducing animals. Yeah, there's some kind of endangered Cambodian species of ugly animal. I think I'm being told
in my ear, but what is it?
Pangolin.
Pangolin.
Well, it wasn't for...
Chawner knows, a Trivial Pursuit winner there.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
It wasn't pangolin. It was something that looks like a pangolin.
Yeah.
But it was just an ugly Cambodian animal that's endangered. And
so have you still adopted it all these years later?
They didn't... no, it's not one of those where Bernie, you know...
Oh, right.
It wasn't...
You get a card from it every Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peter the Pangolin.
All you did is...
Hey, Rog, everything's fine this year.
You know that money we were going to buy you a gift with? Well, we gave it to these people in Cambodia to look after this ugly animal. That's what...
Well, yours trumps mine. Chawner, got any bad stories? Come on. But don't make us cry. Don't go right down into the kind of depths of your terrible childhood or anything. I mean, go on.
Well, if you want to cry, I'll tell you the depths of my terrible career. I once gave a Cambodian animal to a friend of mine, and he was so ungrateful about it that I was absolutely gutted. And I thought that was terrible.
It was a lovely thought. So I think the phrase, it's the thought that counts, only goes so far, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, for you this year, Russell, I have got you Prince Harry's book Spare,
Okay.
I've got you a Just Stop Oil T-shirt. I've got you Hybrid Car of the Year magazine and a vegan cookbook. So I think you are going to be very happy, my friend.
So actually, when it comes to the T-shirt, there is a T-shirt that says Just Stop Oil.
Very nice. I like what they did
We
there.
might actually have an example which Roger's going to put on.
Okay.
Oh, I like this.
Everyone in the gallery is laughing now at the thought of you having to put this in. Bear in mind, Roger's sitting here. For those that can't see this because they're listening on DAB, he's sitting there in a very, very smart suit. Hang on, here we go. Dave, hang on, wait for this.
I think this is worth waiting for.
Thanks. It's orange.
My favourite colour.
It's orange. It's the original variety, Just Stop Oil.
Oh, right.
Oh, beautiful.
But no, the one I really want, though, there you go, is the one it actually says Just Stop Oil. In other words, just stop them as an entity, as an organisation.
Hey, that looks good on you.
Do you want to have a go? Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're giving it to you, but I think you should maybe try and stick it on. And I think it will make for a fantastic clip on social media because that's really not you, is it?
It's about
about
as far from me as it can get, yeah.
Yeah, I think, if you had one, Roger, it would just say more oil.
More oil.
More oil. I've got another story as well.
Go on.
And I hope the family aren't listening, because I think this is hilarious, but the person involved won't. So, again, back in the day, I was talking about my divorced parents. My stepmother back in the day, bless her, was... she liked the finer things in life, let's just say that. So, jewellery, cars, whatever. And look, good luck to her, why not? Why shouldn't we like the nicer things in life? My dad, who's long since departed, unfortunately, was not the sort of individual that gave a lot of thought to Christmas and birthday presents. To give you an idea, when it was my birthday, he would walk up to me with a cheque written out for 50 quid. That was basically the thought. I kid you not.
Brilliant.
That was honestly, you can start crying at my childhood now. And if my sister's listening, I'm sure that she will be texting me in a minute with other
I've got a violin
examples.
around here somewhere, Russ.
Seriously. Anyway, but anyway, this is funny. So my dad, very busy guy, runs his own business, hard-working individual, by the way. He didn't really have the time or the inclination or the imagination to really keep up with my stepmother's wants and needs. So, 1 year it would be a Rolex, another year it would be a ring or a bracelet or a car or whatever. For some reason, having been married to this woman for many, many, many years, he decides one Christmas to present her with a box across the Christmas dinner table, all wrapped up, which she opens, takes out the contents, to reveal that what he has bought her is an electric slow cooker. Now, I know, to me, it was just the funniest thing ever. She, being of big character, looked at my father and said, "What the hell is this?" So she didn't pull any punches. It wasn't one of those...
Did she use the word hell?
Might have been something else. She didn't pull any punches in terms of it being the whole kind of, oh, yeah, that's great. Is there a gift receipt? She literally just, chucked it back across the table. So that was a very, 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 very funny moment. Not just a bad present, but just inappropriate in terms of the present itself and who it had been bought for. Very, very funny indeed.
One of my favourite gifts that I've ever heard of was my mum's 60th, and her old flatmate bought her a pot. I think it was a bit cheesy, but it was a pot of dreams, and you put all your dreams and aspirations in it. However,
pot of dreams. You sure it wasn't something to do with an electric car, like we were just hearing?
Yeah.
Pot of dreams. Build your dreams.
Well, in transit, it had smashed. So she gave Mum for her 60th a pot of smashed, broken dreams, and I think nothing could be more befitting. I think that was wonderful.
Why do we get presents so wrong for people? I mean, particularly when people are older, we just think it's a token thing. Like, I've just got to buy them something, and if it kind of works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We don't really care. Here's a couple of statistics, actually, that I found that were reported in whatever publication it was this morning when I was looking at this. It's something like, as you get older, 54% of presents that are gifted on Christmas Day are unwanted and are re-gifted or given to charity shops. 11% of people sell the gifts that they're given, and 6% literally give them back, a bit like my stepmother did. Incredible. Oh, by the way, back to the stepmother story. The other irony is that my stepmother was a very, very bad cook. Maybe that was the message he was trying to tell her. Maybe it was don't worry about all those dinners that you make for me when I get in love. Just stick a load of stuff, a load of carrots and potatoes and meat and stuff. Do that at 10 in the morning. By the time I get home, there'll be a dinner there of some kind of description. So maybe he was trying to save himself.
I like that. Well, I always, every year, I think one of the things that does change as you get older is presents that I used to think were a bit boring, I now love. For example, book tokens. You said socks earlier on. Deodorant, but I get loads of deodorant for Christmas, and it always makes me wonder: am I a bit whiffy?
Yeah, I think someone's trying to tell you something. And I mean, do you get like a disproportionate ratio of deodorant to other things?
Yes, yes.
Do you? Well, then
and
I
also
think
people with notes saying, "Yeah, you should wear this next time."
I think when people start giving you things like Listermint wrapped up as a Christmas present, I think there's at that point that you think, yeah, okay, they're kind of telling me something.
My mum asked what I want for Christmas this year, and I just said power of attorney. And he did not.
Power of attorney in your house. That would be nice.
Where are those deeds, Mum? Yeah.
So do you have a lot of people to buy for, Dave?
So I'm up at my mum's at the moment. I've got my my partner and my sister. To be honest, I think you're absolutely right, though, that when you get older, the sort of shine gets taken off it a little bit more. And honestly, one of the things that I prefer doing, I like going for experiences of like a cocktail in a nice place or going out for a nice meal, etc., stuff like that. So I'm not going to lie, I am a bit of a skinflint. I don't like, and also one that annoys me, I don't know if you're on this as well, Christmas cards. I don't like it when people write to so-and-so from Russ. What's the point in that?
Do you know, I don't do Christmas cards at all.
I respect that.
Yeah, I just don't. It's and it is a bit embarrassing that we receive Christmas cards from the same people every year. We just said it's not personal because we just don't do any, but we just don't send them back. Yes, that's very bar humbug, isn't it? I love Christmas, by the way, and I'm really looking forward to tomorrow because I've got all the family together. My sister's coming over, my mother-in-law is over from Slovakia. I've got my son coming over on Boxing Day. It's going to be great. So I look forward to it. But the formality of it, if you like, I'm not particularly into. What about gift vouchers, Dave? They're a good idea as you get older, aren't they? Because don't they cover all sins?
I think that's the problem. They do cover all sins, and it's that is a present for someone saying, "I don't know or care anything about you. Here's essentially some money." That said, as I get older, I love a book token. Though.
Is it a bit like me and my dad when he just used to write me out a cheque for 50 quid for Christmas?
Yeah,
it's just who is this guy that keeps popping up around the same time every year? Just write him that check. Yeah, it's a kind of, I guess it doesn't show much thought, but at least they can do something with it rather than the present ending up in that same cupboard that most presents do every year, which is the kind of the unwanted stuff. Which I'm sure everybody has. Well, the data confirms it. 54% of presents gifted on Christmas Day, for older people in particular, it's less if you're younger, are unwanted and re-gifted or given to charity shops. Very sad, isn't it? I mean, the retailers do very well out of it, although, as Roger and I were saying earlier on, not if you're a bricks and mortar shop, it seems, because footfall's down. That's a bit of a shame.
100%. You can see it on the high street that people... I mean, I went into, let's say, a well-known retailer the other day, and people were just taking photos because they were going to get it from online vendors that are much more cheap. And I do think that is quite sad.
I think you were going to say then people were just taking stuff. We did a story about shoplifting with Peter Blexley yesterday, but we're just nicking stuff. Well, that happens too, right? Yeah, a lot.
Why has it still got the tag on it? Well, that's a bonus.
Well, would you be offended, Dave, if someone bought you something and it had obviously been nicked, but it was something you really wanted?
Is it bad that I kind of respect that?
Moral dilemma here. Go on, answer very carefully.
No, I'd like that. I think there's a jeopardy. I mean, obviously we are not condoning unlawful acts.
Exactly. Glad you said that before Sarah was in my ear, but yeah, obviously not condoning it, but it must happen, right?
Yeah, of course. I do like those money cannot buy experiences. I think those are quite fun. I genuinely once year brewed my own beer and gave as part of a Christmas present out to someone, which was really nice, but it was horrible beer. So
I think that's worse than gifting some kind of Vietnamese animal subscription, isn't it? Talk us through the beer. I mean, did anyone that tasted it like it? Anyone?
Oh, it's horrible. Never brew your own beer. I think this is the problem. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, and it never tastes as good as anything else that you can get.
What did you call it? Shauna's Cheer?
Very nice. If I had half the wit of you, I would have done. I just call it Dave's Despair. That was what I went with because that was more fitting.
Dave's Despair. And seriously, before you go, what are you up to? Are you touring? What are you doing?
Next year, if anyone wants a Christmas present for people that they don't like, I am touring, so buy them tickets for people that you hate, because it'll be an hour of disappointment. But yeah, I'm going on tour next year, which is very exciting. But for this Christmas, I'm up at my mum's. It's just me and my mum, and we're going to have a lovely Christmas and avoid Mrs. Brown's boys like the plague.
Do you know what? We haven't talked about that. We haven't talked about that. I mean, we slate the BBC frequently. In fact, I was talking about them and their rather aggressive approach to licence enforcement yesterday. But yes, we haven't touched on the phenomenon, I think, which is how Mrs. Brown's Boys survives. Do you know what that is, Roger? Do you watch Mrs. Brown's Boys?
No.
It is the worst so-called, I don't want to call it a sitcom because that would be insulting every other sitcom that's ever been produced. It is something from the 70s that is not funny, which effectively is an old Irish comedian that dresses up as a woman that pretends to be the mother of a family that runs around shouting at people, and there isn't an element of it. There isn't a flicker of humour from my point of view. I mean, even Dave Chawner is funnier.
I couldn't...
Wow.
I couldn't have put it better, except for the last part.
He knows I'm kidding.
I think it's one of the worst television programs I've ever seen.
So how does it survive? Dave, you're in media.
I have no idea.
How does it survive?
I think it survives in the same way that, you know, if there's like a nuclear apocalypse, cockroaches survive. I think Mrs. Brown's Boys is that kind of equivalent.
Do you think Mrs. Brown's Boys is the cockroach of BBC output?
Yeah, and I think that's mean to cockroaches.
Yes, I wouldn't want to be a cockroach in the same kind of comparison, really.
No.
Gavin and Stacey, as we're talking about Christmas telly,
I like that. That's great.
Now, this is kind of back to the old days. Now, by my recollection, the last few years, there hasn't really been a decent Christmas special on that you can really get into. And I don't mean Doctor Who and all that stuff, because adults don't watch Doctor Who, do they? The phones are about to light up. But, you know, in the old days, you had Only Fools and Horses and so on. You have a Christmas special, and it was kind of 2 hours long, and it was brilliant, and it was funny. At least this year, we have the Gavin and Stacey Christmas special, which I presume, I haven't checked. Guys, is it on Christmas Day? Is it on tomorrow? I presume it is.
It is. It's up against the new Wallace and Gromit. That's the big thing that people are... the telly wars this year.
Yeah.
Wallace and Gromit.
That's not a fair fight, is it?
So I think it is. I'm Wallace and Gromit all the way.
Seriously? And I bet you also think that Wallace and Gromit the movie is a Christmas movie.
No, best Christmas movie, Muppets Christmas Carol, hands down, no competition.
Okay, no debate.
No debate. That's it. That's empirical. Like, you cannot argue that. It's better than Die Hard.
It's gospel, which is not in itself a Christmas movie. We did all this yesterday.
No, it's not.
We did all this yesterday. It's not. Of course it's not. Anyway, no. I don't want to repeat the entirety of yesterday's 3 hours, but I think we made the point over and over and over again. But anyway, look, Dave, thank you very much for joining us on Christmas Eve. Loves your mum, and have a great Christmas, mate. And we will see you on tour next year, mate. Well done. Thank you. OK, Roger, I'm sure you probably need to go now, so we're going to let you fly, go. We'll be back after this. I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk. Back after this break, we'll be talking about some other stuff.
I've heard from young people saying they can't afford the rail tickets to get to see their families.
The rail fares, well, we've just nationalised the railways. The very first
But the fares aren't coming down, are they?
So they will once the franchises return to public ownership, so that's a pretty big
That
bold
is not my understanding, but OK, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
OK, so brace yourselves. We're going to reveal in a second exactly where he is. And by he, I mean the red man, the man in the red suit himself, Santa, Father Christmas, St Nicholas, whatever you want to call him, that doesn't matter. But we have pretty exclusive access here, I think it's fair to say, to NORAD satellites, where we can actually see where Santa has been and try and estimate where he's going next. Yes, again, my cautionary warning, if there are children of a certain age listening to this, do make sure that pretty soon, I mean, we're 25 past 8, pretty soon they might want to be tucked up in bed and asleep, because I suspect if Santa does land on your roof and your kids are not asleep, they're not going to get what they want. So I know we know this, but if there are any children, any tender ears listening, do take note, because I don't think he's that far away. Well, look, to talk about this, we have found, and kudos to the producers here, we have found a space and Santa tracking expert. Believe me, this thing exists. Mr. Andrew Lound. Andrew, I am honoured. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. So I'm fascinated by this in terms of how Santa is tracked. I mean, can you give us, without getting kind of too rocket scientist on us, how is he tracked?
Well, NORAD, which is the North American Defence System, has a number of satellites in Earth orbit, and their job is actually to track potentially threatening aircraft and missiles coming towards them. But they can actually use that to track Santa, and they've been doing this actually since the 1960s. Using it to track him when he moves around. And the reason for that is to make sure that, technically speaking, he's an unidentified flying object into the skies, and to make sure that he's not accidentally intercepted as a threat, they actually track him with using the satellites. Essentially, there are three what we call geostationary satellites. They're fixed point over the Earth, so they cover the entire globe, and then they can actually track Santa carefully. When GPS systems came into operation, GPS systems were actually allocated to the sleigh. So they actually sent out a constant pulse signal so it can be completely tracked. And now we've, as you know, we've got the Starlink constellation satellites around the world. It means that for every position he is on the planet, he can actually now be tracked and seen as he goes everywhere around the world.
And it's in real time?
It's in real time, yes. I mean, I'm looking at the data now. He's actually 47 seconds away from Lusaka in Zambia as he's flying over there.
So kind of somewhere between Central and Southern Africa.
Yeah, and he's just dropped over 3.3 billion presents at this moment in time. So he's doing really well at the moment. The weather conditions are really good, actually. In the past.
And Andrew, where does he start then? So I presume he starts kind of in the Pacific, kind of off the coast of Australia, I guess, because it's a time zone thing, I guess, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, the time zone thing is really interesting because the Pacific get it all first because they're ahead of us, of course, on that. So he has to actually start over that part.
So there are children right now that already kind of have woken up and are opening their presents as we speak. That's a bit unfair,
That's correct, yes.
Some people unfair that they get a head start.
Yeah, they get the head start for it just as they get the head start in the new year. Santa's starting point, by the way, is classified. We're not allowed to give away exactly his starting point, but his first deliveries are over the Pacific Islands.
So he's presumably covered Australia, he's covered the Far East, so he's done kind of Japan, Indonesia, through China, across the Gulf, the Middle East. Where else do you think he's covered?
Well, yes, he's covered most of the Middle Eastern countries now are done. He's now heading down. He's heading from north to south, and then he'll actually circle around the Earth and come back up again and down again. And so now he's heading down to the African continent now. Let's just have a quick double check where he is. Yes, he's now heading to Lilongwe in Malawi. He'll be there in 1 minute 12 seconds. So children there will be getting quite excited.
He moves pretty fast. I mean, does he have his own kind of?
Yeah.
His own time continuum as such, Andrew?
He travels at 48 miles per second is the actual speed to do it. In order to stop any problems with that, he has
that's quicker than Labour are taking us into recession. Let's not go there, sorry.
Not quite.
Did that come out loud? So I was just thinking that in my head. I'm sorry.
Yes, he has an electromagnetic bubble around him, and that actually allows him to move really rapidly through the atmosphere. It's quite a fantastic piece of technology to allow him to do that, and therefore he can skim through the atmosphere. Essentially what he's doing, he's using the Earth's magnetic field, that's why he goes north-south, to bounce through the atmosphere at these fantastic speeds without any problems.
It's fabulous. And I read somewhere, and look, maybe this is made up, that part of the tracking is Rudolph's nose.
Yes, that's a very good point. One of the things that has been in the great new pieces of technology, and no one will say where the technology came from, but a new type of microchip was actually placed into the nasal cavity of Rudolph. Now, Rudolph's nose obviously glows red, and that actually is picked up in mid-infrared telescopes, such as the Webb telescope, for instance, could pick up that and can actually track him using that. So if power systems go down, his nose itself, using mid-infrared telescopes, can actually pick him and see him moving through the atmosphere.
Is there a danger then if Rudolph sneezes that the tracking stops?
No, because as I say, we've got multiple tracking systems on the vehicle, so that can be done.
So there's backup, secondary, and
and we can also use, apart from mid-infrared, we can use far infrared as well if we needed to. As he's passing through the atmosphere, there is some heating going on there with the electromagnetic bubble, and we can actually still track him with that. And of course, we've got the ground tracking stations as well, of course, with radar, which can have a look from where he is.
I know that the tracking obviously is historic. Is there any way of predicting what time he might get to, let's say, Brentwood in Essex?
Yeah, he's looking for Britain around midnight. So that's the time schedule at the moment. He's looking for midnight. The target point is to try and get.
So can I just say sorry to everyone listening? That means your kids are about to stay up a lot longer than you thought they were.
No, you'll get them to bed because bearing in mind, he does have systems on board where they actually, although we're tracking Santa, ahead of Santa are in fact the ELF unit, as it's called, or special ELF unit.
Like a recon unit.
Yeah, and their job is to make sure everybody's in bed. So that's really important. So Special ELF unit gets there about an hour ahead, so they're all checking to make sure everybody's in their right place so that he's not spotted on the ground, and that's really important. But yes, he's targeting for midnight over every major area, so this is where the time lag comes in carefully. And travelling at this speed, he can actually make that. So it's about midnight he's expecting to be over Britain.
But just to reassure, if children are awake as he is overhead, and the elves know, doesn't he? I think he comes back once, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He will come back once. They'll give him an opportunity. There is enough flexibility in the time programme for it to get back. So you've always got an opportunity. If you just happen to spot an elf running around, then quickly get into bed, get under the sheets and get yourself asleep. And then within a few hours, you'll wake up and there will all be your presence, quite likely. And I know some people have been a bit concerned over flying aircraft. Something which NORAD also organise, and this is the same with all other countries around the world, whether it's Russia or China or whatever, they actually scramble 2 fighter aircraft to escort Santa. So as Santa enters over your airspace, fighter aircraft actually are taken off in order to make sure he's escorted safely
into your airspace. To protect him.
Yeah, so there's no worry about that. And that's a program that started in the 1960s as well, where when he flies over Canada, for instance, Canadian aircraft escort him to more or less to the border of the United States, when American aircraft, US aircraft, take him over.
Andrew,
and Britain does that as well.
Don't you can see this? I think this might actually be live pictures that we've managed
you'll get some pictures,
find. Which so if you're watching on YouTube, everybody, you'll be able to see this is actually Santa, the reindeer, obviously over, where is he now? Zimbabwe, by the looks of it.
Yes, Bulawayo.
Yeah, over Zimbabwe. So this is live pictures of where he is. So he's still a little while away. So as you say, should be over Britain about midnight. And here's a mystery. Now, you might be able to help me solve this. I'm not sure this is your bag as a kind of space rocket science guy. How does Santa eat all those mince pies that are left out across billions and billions of households across the world?
Well, that's actually quite interesting because he has one of the best constitution of anybody that's ever been known. He's able to absorb that. And because of the speed he's travelling at 48 miles per second, that mass, because, of course, we're talking about mass ratios here, that mass disperses because of the speed he's actually travelling at.
And is the ratio of mince pies and presents 1 to 1?
It's usually about 1.5 to 1, so you've got to be careful. There's more presents than mince pies, fortunately.
Well, still a lot. So far, presents delivered 3.36 billion.
Yeah.
That's a lot of mince pies, mate, isn't it?
That's a lot of mince pies, because you just feed them to the elves and also to the reindeer as well. And don't forget to leave carrots out for the reindeer.
Yes, indeed. Very important. Anything else? Water for the reindeer, milk, of course.
Yes, yes, and if you can get a shovel and a bucket, then you can use the reindeer poo on your dad's roses.
Oh, really? Okay. All
yes,
right. Well,
that's very good to do. It's very good. It's a big gardening thing. I think Alan Titchmarsh was really big on this, of using reindeer poo.
And presumably it's particularly potent. So, Andrew, you're coming back in about an hour for another update, I understand. Right, fantastic.
Yes.
I'm really glad we found you, because this is fascinating stuff and actually very, very reassuring, frankly. OK, I think we're going to take a break. Andrew, many thanks indeed for now. See you a bit later on with further updates. Santa, as we speak, just over Botswana, everybody. Back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, I think that was one of the most interesting segments, certainly of the Christmas period, to actually have a space Santa tracking expert as kind of part of the Talk freelance team. Fantastic. And he'll be back, as I say, in about an hour's time just to give us a further update. But let's turn to some property, shall we? Now, property is always a thing at this time of year that the media like to talk about, looking forward to the 2025 year, whether it be house prices or indeed, as we're about to discover, renters and rentals, the property private rental sector. And no one better to talk about this than my very, very good friend, the landlord's friend, in fact, Paul Champlina. Paul, how you doing?
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you, mate. What do you think of our segment just now, the whole Santa thing? That was fascinating, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was. Whether we can have some good news now, I couldn't tell you. I'm sure you know the answer to that, Russell.
Well, let's see. So, look, property is always a hot subject, always a hot topic. You obviously specialise in landlord and tenant stuff as obviously part of your role. You're the founder of Landlord Action, of course. Stuff in the press today talking about 2025 from the point of view of landlords and tenants being the worst year ever. Do you buy that?
You know what? It might be up there, Russell, unfortunately.
So why do we think that might be the case?
Well, look, the reality is this, none of us really believe that the government are going to build 1.5 million properties in 5 years. That's a complete and utter pipe dream. We know that. We know that the private rental sector has been the sticking plaster for the lack of social housing for many, 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 many years, decades of non-action, dare I say it, by government.
Well, we stopped building council houses, I mean, back in the 80s, really, didn't we?
Well, exactly. I mean, dare I say it, on social housing, I know we're talking about private and sector housing, but in social housing, repair complaints have gone up 330% in the last year. We've got a real massive problem. Speaking on behalf of the landlord community, and I've lived and breathed this, acting for landlords for 34 years and setting Landlord Action up 24 years ago, I know from being on the front line, there's a lot of the small landlords, they've just had enough. And that's come down to the taxation that was brought in by George Osborne in 2016, where landlords were being taxed on turnover rather than profit, or mortgage interest relief mortgages. Then, of course, we had the mortgage interest rises that happened. Bearing in mind, landlords have had it for a good long time because they've had 0% interest rates for a long time. But I think the reality is the Renters' Rights Bill, the Renters' Reform Bill, it's coming in. We know it's coming in. But I think the big losers in all this are not going to be landlords, it's going to be tenants, because, of course, rents are rising. They've been rising at a pace that has been absolutely crazy.
I saw a number last week that rents are up about, I think these were ONS numbers, Office of National Statistics, that rents are up about 10% year on year.
They are.
I mean, that's far greater than wage growth, right?
It's far greater than wage growth, and it's becoming unsustainable. But the unintended consequence, we hear that all the time. And, the headline has been across party, and obviously with Labour, and they've ramped it up, is the banning of non-fault evictions. And that's happening third quarter of next year, realistically.
And just want to explain a little bit about that, Paul, because that's a pretty important thing for landlords. Lots of landlords are threatening to sell up, effectively, as a consequence of that, which is in the new Renter Rights Act, isn't it? So just explain a little bit what that means compared to how a landlord would have existed previously.
Yeah, they called it non-fault. So a landlord could serve a 2-month note to say, I want the property back. But there normally is a reason.
But outside of the tenancy agreement, once that's finished.
Outside the tenancy agreement. But the main reasons were because the tenant was in arrears, or there's antisocial behaviour. But the biggest reason that we see at Landlord Action, especially in the last 18 months, is landlords are selling. I was worried about this, and I said this in the press 5.5 years ago when the Renters Reform White Paper came out. The unintended consequence is because obviously costs have gone up, landlords are saying, you know what, I'm getting out. The reality now is, you've had something like 163,000 properties have come out the private rental sector in the last 4 years.
And what's that as a percentage of total stock, roughly?
Well, look, total stock is about 4.5 million. You've got 2.7 million landlords, about 9.5, 10 million tenants. But the reality is tenants are being priced out the market.
Yeah.
So, you've got the average rent in London's $2,500 a month. The reality is if stock shrinks, which clearly it's been happening the last few years, you've got 16 tenants fighting for one property. Landlords historically didn't put rents up, but they've been forced to put rents up. And now what's going to happen now, and I can tell you this, I'm seeing it first time, from now until when the Renters' Rights Bill becomes a law, in the next 6 to 8 months, that's just going to ramp up more. So landlords are going to get out.
So you think landlords are evicting tenants now in anticipation of the legislation becoming law?
Without a doubt. I see it firsthand at Landlord Action. We do, 4,000 instructions a year. Most of it is down to rent arrears or landlords are selling. The reality is you can bring this regulation in, and quite rightly, tenants need stronger rights. If you're paying 30 to 35% of your wages, Russell, towards rent, tenants need greater security. But the reality is, if you are a landlord and if you're told all the time during the press that you're so-and-so, I was going to say something else. It's not Watershed now at 9 o'clock. But if you're being vilified, as well as all the regulation, mortgage costs, interest rates, you've got EPCs, electric performance certificates, which means landlords on average got to spend, 15, 20K to put their property up to a level C to make sure that it's environmentally
more energy efficient. Yeah. So what you're saying, so regulations increasing, tax breaks have reduced, the quest for net zero is hitting landlords hard or about to. So I guess on that basis, not a great time to be a landlord. But I guess I'd counter it, Paul, to say that if those landlords are indeed leaving the sector, which means there's a shortage of properties, that's probably one of the reasons why rents are going up as they are. So therefore, presumably from a landlord's point of view, the yield, the percentage that they're getting on their kind of investment is increasing, right? So it's still pretty healthy for a landlord despite the headwinds.
So I say this, I do loads of public speaking, Russell. I say this to the landlords. You're still getting more rents than ever before, and you're getting a pick of better tenants than before. What's happening is 85% of tenants out there between 1 and 3 properties, they're the landlords that are leaving the sector. And if you're a tenant that have been living in a property, on average, a tenant is in a property for 4 years on average. If you end up getting a notice, and I don't think a lot of the tenant organisations, I think they need to work closer with landlords rather than it's a them and us.
There is quite an antagonistic relationship.
Without a doubt.
I've fallen out with tenancy bodies, if you like. Tenancy
you don't
activists.
Fall out of anyone, Russell, do you?
It hardly ever happens, just on a weekly basis. Now, I've crossed swords with various what I would call tenancy activist groups that have this pantomime villain view of landlords. Now, look, I'm a small-time landlord. Obviously, look, you're a landlord. You're involved with landlords all day, every day. You mix with them, in their thousands. I know you do as on a yearly basis. And actually, most people recognise you. I haven't said this from your Channel 5 TV show, which I think has stopped now. But I always get this wrong. Slum Landlord, Nightmare Tenant?
Nightmare Tenant, Slum Landlords. I did 64 episodes. They're still showing it on...
So you knocking on the door,
on
kind of 5. Kicking people out kind of thing. But
it's not as easy. I mean, they're all genuine cases. I turned up to one door and the guy owed £85,000 rent arrears. There is reasons. Landlords don't evict tenants on a whim. There's always a reason. Now, mostly the reason now, Russell, is because they're selling. But there are more institutional landlords coming in the sector. And I think that the government, across party, from Conservatives to Labour, across party, is they want landlords to be more professional and tenants to live in safer properties. And that is very reasonable, and that needs to happen. But there needs to be a lot more educational. At the end of the day, Russell, being a landlord is a business. It is a profession. And there are still landlords in the industry that don't see themselves as landlords.
But do you think your advice would be, I mean, all things considered, yes, I know that there are obstacles and there's tougher regulation coming, and it's definitely not quite as brilliant to be a landlord as maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago. But I guess the question is, obviously based on what I've just said about yields, but also if you're going to sell your portfolio of rental properties that you've owned for a number of years, you've got to pay capital gains tax on the gain. And then it begs the question, Paul, where is that landlord that's just released, let's say, £500,000 worth of equity out of their buy-to-let portfolio? Where are they going to put the money instead, where they're going to get a 10% yield?
Well, exactly. I mean, look, we know property is a safe bet. The problem you've had in recent times is being a landlord is not a good thing in the eyes of the media, because everyone drives a Rolls Royce and a Bentley, which is so far from the truth. It's unbelievable.
Well, tell us then, Paul, what's a typical landlord in Britain? I mean, what's the reality? So they're not big corporations. They're not, the old Rackmans of, years and years and years ago that are heartless and uncaring and super, super rich. What's a typical landlord?
Look, the vast majority of landlords have 1 to 3 properties, on average, actually about 8 properties. The reality is 30% of them are full-time in property, and the other, and some of them retired, and the vast majority work full time. This is when the old news item came out where Keir Starmer said that landlords aren't working people. We've had that discussion before. They are working people, and lots of landlords care about their tenants, because at the end of the day, Russell, all they want is the tenant to pay the rent on time, look after the property, and be in communication with them, because they want a tenant to stay in the property as long as possible.
But is your advice then for the landlords listening to this, of which there will be some, your advice is to hang on in there?
Without a doubt, if you don't need to sell, don't sell. You know, the reality is you're quite right. Rents have been going up. I think the reality is this government and the previous government are saying, you know what, the market is still 20%, but tenants are paying more and more money now, and they deserve a better service. They deserve a safer property. But let's be very clear about this, and I think you almost probably agree with me, Russell. The private rental sector is far better than the social housing sector. You know, I've been involved in other programs and other channels and so forth, but I can tell you now, you know, you've got 1.3 million people on council waiting lists, and because of the lack of social housing and councils now being skint, let's face it, and not being able to deal with repairs. I mean, I think the housing ombudsman had 22,000 complaints on social landlords. You know, it's far worse.
I mean, look, I'm obviously... I'm in the property sector too. I mix with you and Ben Beadle from the NRLA. I go to conferences and events and so on. And I can genuinely say, hand on heart, that every landlord I meet, although you could say, well, yes, but you're at professional events, which is those that are going to attract professional landlords. That's fair. But I meet landlords, male and female, of course, let's not get caught up in that, that are, without exception, A, they're not big corporate landlords, but B, they have high standards, they want to comply, they want to keep up with legislation and so on. Yeah, and above all, they're really, really good landlords to their tenants. I mean, Richard Blanco, so for instance, who is a private landlord, does a lot of public speaking. He said to me recently, he said, I've got tenants that should be paying more rent. He said, but they're single mums, don't have much money, so they're paying less because I'm subsidising them, because A, I've got a heart and I'm a human being, and also because they're good and they're reliable. That stuff doesn't tend to come across, particularly in the media, very much. Although what we do hear, of course, is councils themselves getting hauled over the coals for the terrible state of some of their properties. We've seen a Labour MP over the last few months, of course, since being elected to government, who turns out to be a huge landlord, the biggest landlord in Parliament, actually. I forget his name for a second, apologies. I'm sure someone will tell me in a sec. But, it turns out he gets called out because his properties are exposed on a panorama for being substandard, full of mould and all sorts. So it does seem that those that should be vilified are... Jazz Athwell, I think. Yes, thank you. Those that are vilified are the wrong ones. Those that are vilified should be the public sector, and particularly people like Jazz Athwell, rather than 99% of good, decent landlords across Britain that do a good job for good reason.
Look, the reality, 100%. The reality is landlords do care about tenants. They want tenants to treat that property as a home, because if you treat it as a home, the tenant will stay in the property longer. The reality is good landlord stories don't sell newspapers. That's why I was on a TV program called Nightmare Tenants, Slum Landlords, and it did 6 series. Nightmare slum landlords are criminal landlords, but let's be realistic. There are far more bad tenants than bad landlords.
That never gets reported either. Yeah.
And that doesn't get reported either. I can tell you firsthand from doing this for a long time.
Look, Paul, we've got to cut it here, I'm afraid. Sorry, we've got loads and loads to fit in. But look, thank you very much indeed for giving up your Christmas Eve. Stay tuned. If you've got kids around, as I know you have, that may be very interested in where Santa is, because obviously we'll be coming back and giving everybody an update on that a bit later on. But we will be back after this short break.
heard from young people saying they can't afford the rail tickets to get to see their families.
The rail fares, well, we've just nationalised the railways. The very first
but the fares aren't coming down, are they?
They will once the franchises return to public ownership, so that's a pretty big
That
bold
is not my understanding, but OK, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
OK, so we've got a few minutes before we go to the news. After that, I want to talk about Christmas songs. We're going to have Ollie London joining us to talk about Christmas songs. The best and the worst. I certainly have my list. If you remember, if you were listening yesterday, watching yesterday, we were talking about the best and worst Christmas movies, and we had quite the debate about the good, the bad and the ugly, if you like, although that is in itself a film but not a Christmas movie, by the way. So let's talk a little bit quickly about Christmas songs. I'll tell you what the worst one is, shall I? And that is Shane MacGowan and Kirsty MacColl, 1988 released Fairy Tale of New York. Yeah, that's my worst one. You can tell me if you agree or disagree. So I'd love to know what you think. I've also got my best ones, which will be coming up later. 0344 499 1000. Let me know what you think should be nominated as the best ever Christmas song and the worst ever Christmas songs. Obviously, there's a huge list to choose from. It might be that a current, certain politically topical track might make the list, Freezing This Christmas. I'm not sure if we've got that, but maybe later on we'll bring that to you, because I know we've played it extensively on this station. But anyway, let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. It's just for fun, of course. Also just for fun are some texts that we've had. Let me just read some of these out. Dorothy says, I'd like to wish yourself, the Talk team and your family a very Merry Christmas. And talking of presents, my best present was a Shetland pony. Wow, that's quite a thing, isn't it? How do you wrap a Shetland pony, for goodness sake? And yes, we were very poor, but my brother paid £50 for it and my mum £50. For this, I had to work every evening and weekend for many years, but boy, was it worth it. Do you know what? There's nothing better than a hard-won present. You know, we throw presents around now as a society, don't we, left, right and centre, and, you know, kids will sit there opening their 47 presents tomorrow morning and just go, yeah, OK, thanks, next. But back in the old days, as I was kind of referring to with my big track present story, there was kind of one present each, really, as a kid. Going back to the whole EV story, I had generally never heard of BYD, Build Your Dreams. Max in Norwich tells me that they're a Chinese company. Well, I'm shocked, Max. He says, yeah, surprise, surprise. No doubt they'll claim to be greener than green like most other Chinese exporters. It makes you wonder what all those coal-fired power stations they're building are actually for. Well, presumably, those, a bit like the diesel that goes into the bulldozers for the extraction of the lithium for the batteries. All a bit hypocritical, isn't it? Ash Bishop says, again, going back to the question of cars that we were talking about in the first hour, I drive a 1937 Ford pickup. It's as green as it gets. If you're driving a Tesla in Germany at present, where coal is back in vogue for power generation due to a slight oversight from Mama Merkel, you are literally driving a steam engine. Same applies here for gas. There's nothing green about an electric car. Well, again, that was my point with regard to the life of the car. If an electric car, particularly when it comes to its battery life, is substantially shorter than an old petrol car that's 40, 50 or 60 years old, then surely that has to be factored into the greenness, doesn't it? Someone here says, I've recently taken in my possession a BYD Seal. It sounds like someone that's going to go and launch an attack on the Middle East, doesn't it? Some kind of military thing. It's 527 brake horsepower, looks and drives amazing. Never thought I'd go electric, but this thing is lovely. Look it up on Google. No, I won't. You might be impressed. No, I won't. Plus, I'm only leasing it, so I don't care about depreciation. The cost to recharge it from empty to full is about £7 at home and does 300 miles. And I'm ashamed to say that that's from John in the county of Essex, where I happen to be from. Anyway, we'll come back to more texts, hopefully some calls as well. If you're sitting there and a bit of a loose end, let me know. 0344 499 1000 about anything that we're talking about. I'll be back after this. I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
OK, it's that time. It's Russell Quirk. I'm in for Kevin O'Sullivan. This is the Christmas Eve political asylum. But for the next few minutes, it's going to be very, very controversial indeed, because we're going to be tackling the extremely important question of the best and worst Christmas songs. So I've got a guest coming up that's going to help me with this. But I really want to know from you what you think the best and the worst are. So I'm going to kick this off, as I hinted just now. The worst, the most pointless, is Shane MacGowan and Kirsty MacColl's 1988 Fairy Tale of New York. And I'll tell you for why. There has to be a reason for anyone to nominate either the best or the worst, of course, and I'll tell you why this particular track is the worst. It's simply because Shane MacGowan, the late Shane MacGowan, I mean this with no disrespect, Shane, can't sing. Let's be honest, he cannot sing. Now, I know this has become a kind of Christmas institution, this thing, and I'm not saying it's a bad song in terms of the melody, not that I'm a musically minded person necessarily, but Shane MacGowan is as good a singer as, frankly, I am, and I'm not renowned for my singing. So that's why I think it's the worst. And there are a number of others that I think are the best. But let's get some help on this, shall we? So our good friend Ollie London. Ollie, you know all about good music, I'm sure, particularly at Christmas. How are you, mate? Look at you.
Yeah, good, thank you. Merry Christmas to you, Russell.
Merry Christmas. Look at you. Were you told to wear that?
Up for the show.
So for those of you that can't see, Ollie is resplendent in a Santa hat.
I just did it at my own accord.
It's fabulous. Right, so should we start with yours? Do you want to start the controversy? And hopefully followed by whoever's listening might want to wade in and agree with you or disagree with you, or obviously set the agenda for themselves. So what do you think the best and worst are?
Well, I would say probably Last Christmas by Wham is an absolute Christmas classic. It gets you in the mood every year when you see that ski lodge and all the friends around the dinner table. And I think it really brings back nostalgic memories for many people from the 80s that were born in that era. So I would nominate, Last Christmas by Wham. It's timeless. It never gets old, never gets boring, and it's a complete Christmas classic.
It's brilliant, and it's on my list. Should we listen to it?
Go on then.
Come on, let's have a little listen. Just to remind ourselves how fantastic it is. I think isn't it #1 somewhere at the moment, even though it was released about 40 odd years ago? Right, we'll come back to that. I don't think we've got it in the archives, but no, I agree with you entirely. Last Christmas Wham, absolutely fantastic. Anything else? What else do you think should make the cut?
Well, of course, All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. It is a classic. And, Mariah actually rakes in millions of dollars every single Christmas just from this one song alone. So it is one of the most popular Christmas songs of all time. The video is great. Again, it's timeless. And Mariah re-releases it every year, but it's a timeless classic. And it.
But Ollie, is she a nice person? I mean, isn't she known to be one of the biggest divas in show business? I mean, that I'm afraid that might bar her from the list. Anyway, can we just go back to the Wham Last Christmas thing? Let's have a listen. And you know what's poignant, Ollie? George Michael died 8 years ago tomorrow, on Christmas Day. What a sad, sad day that was. I mean, the words legend and icon are kind of banded around a bit too easily, aren't they? But George Michael absolutely was. And do you know what else I was going to say like about George Michael? I never met him, obviously. I did see him in a nightclub once, actually, and he gave me a bit of a funny look. But anyway, that's another story for another time. Is the way that he brilliantly and very empathetically dealt with his mate Andrew Ridgeley, who you could argue didn't really need to be part of Wham at all. I'm not sure he did anything really, apart from kind of stand there pretending to play a guitar every now and again. But he treated him fantastically, didn't he? So, and of course, the other thing that George Michael kind of posthumously was known for, as it turns out, is his huge donations to charity, but very anonymously. So great guy, fantastic singer-songwriter, and yeah, I think definitely the best Christmas song ever, frankly. So I agree with you with that. I don't agree with you though with the whole Mariah Carey thing. I mean, again, not a bad tune, but she just irritates me.
Well, Mariah Carey's known for her diva personality, but I think she's also got a great sense of humour now. She does joke about herself being a diva. She's funny about it. She doesn't take it too seriously, but she does. She's always dressed in diamonds, always dressed in designer clothing, but I think that's part of her act. I think deep down she's a nice person, but she's very specific. She doesn't like fluorescent lighting, so she does not allow people to take selfies under fluorescent lighting.
Is she one of these people that doesn't let her staff look her in the eye?
Well, there's definitely rumours about that. We've heard about Beyonce, J-Lo. You're not allowed to look at them in the eye. There are rumours about Mariah, but she seems to have a sense of humour. But some of these divas, they are known for being behaving like this. But, I don't think she takes it too seriously.
OK, so what else then? So Shakin' Stevens, Merry Christmas, everyone. Have we got a bit of that? I mean, I hope not in a way, because I think it's terrible. Oh, no, sorry, Sarah's given it the thumbs up. I guess we've got to listen to it. Hang on, I'll say that again. I guess we've got to listen to it. Not there? OK. We're having some technical issues delving into the archives of all these Christmas movies. I think we have got it now. Yeah. No, that was Mariah Carey. But I suppose we were talking about Mariah Carey, so I think there's a bit of a time lag between here and the gallery. Never mind. Let's get Shakin' Stevens on as well, because this, I wouldn't say it's the worst Christmas song ever, but it's not particularly endearing. I don't think it's particularly warm and fluffy, is it, really? But anyway, the gallery will let me know when they've got that. Tell you what else is good, though, Ollie, is Brenda Lee rocking around the Christmas tree. Obviously, it's an old one, but I really like that. That's very joyous and jangly and belly and so on, isn't it? Do you like that?
That's one of my favourites as well. And, you know, Brenda Lee's just hit over 1 billion streams on Spotify with this song, and she's still performing. You know, I believe she's in her 80s. She looks absolutely fantastic, and she performs the song every single year, often at the Rockefeller Center in New York. And, you know, it's a feel-good classic. It makes you feel good, and, you know, she's an amazing artist, you know, known for this one song, of course, but...
Yeah, do you think she's made millions out of it? Is she the kind of the About a Boy equivalent? You know, the film where you know the guy's living off the royalties of one song. Maybe, I mean, I'm not sure she's particularly well known for anything else, but if she's still alive and still performing it, maybe she's doing very, very nicely. Should we have a listen to it? I think we have got it this time. Sorry, the elves, yeah, having a kind of flip out, but I think we've got it.
Rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop.
Wow, I mean, did you see that, Ollie? I mean, she looked about 80 there, didn't she? So I'm not sure if she was miming to the original song, because I wonder if she still sings it in the same way now. But it's just fabulous. It's very kind of punchy and rhythmic, isn't it? And again, I say this as a non-musical person, so there's me sitting here trying to describe the ins and outs, the ups and downs, and the technicalities of these songs. I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I just like what I like. So yeah, Brenda Lee I really like. Have we got Shakin' Stevens now, guys? Let's have a listen to this mediocre track. OK, so it's got some bells in it, I suppose. Do you know what it reminds me of? He sounds a bit like Chaz and Dave singing it, and I just think they were of no musical quality whatsoever. Am I being a bit grinchy, guys? Am I being a bit grumpy about this? Yeah, everyone's nodding in the gallery. Sorry, I just like what I like. Ollie, Shakin' Stevens, yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down?
To be honest, that's the kind of song you hear in the shopping mall, you know, on repeat all day, and it's one of those songs that gets a little bit boring. So I don't think it's up there with the greats like Last Christmas or All I Want for Christmas Is You. I think it's more of like a shopping centre song that you just hear every time you go shopping, and it just kind of, you know, blends in the background. So, yeah, I don't think it's one of the best.
Can I tell you what I think? I've just realised what my issue is with Christmas movies, why I'm so... I like some so much and some so little. I've just realised what it is. My wife has Christmas songs on in the car from early November. So when she drops me somewhere or in the car together, literally for about a 2-month period, or it has now been 2 months, I am exposed to Christmas songs left, right and centre. So maybe, because I've been listening to them for 8 weeks now, maybe the ones that I don't like, I now really don't like. And, of course, the ones that I do like, yeah, I kind of feel pretty jolly about. So it's Mrs Quirk's fault, I think, for insisting on having Christmas music on in the car in November, which, by the way, a bit like Christmas decorations, get the words out, Christmas decorations, a bit like Christmas music. Perhaps there should be a law introduced, I think, that maybe those things shouldn't be allowed until the first day, or certainly the first week of December. Right, what else? Michael Bublé. Do we like Michael Bublé? Ollie, you look like a Michael Bublé sort of guy.
Well, I may look like that with a checkered shirt, but to be honest, I'm not a fan. I know there's so many people out there probably
He's quite
like
cool,
say,
though, isn't he? He's a dude. He's a bit of a crooner.
He's a real talent. He's really, really a fantastic singer. And like you said, he's a crooner. But I personally, you know, he does a lot of cover songs, not so many originals. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm sure there's probably lots of people listening right now saying, what on earth are you saying? He's amazing. But yeah, I find his songs, you know, a little beautiful voice, but I find it a little bit dull.
Ollie, are you saying that Michael Bublé is effectively just a karaoke star? Shall we have a listen?
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go.
OK, so the image there was a bit grey and grainy. It was could have been Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin, but that was apparently Michael Bublé. What a voice! But you're just saying he's not a creative talent, can't write anything.
Well, he tends to do a lot of cover songs, and while he has a fantastic voice, very, very talented guy, yeah, I prefer artists that kind of do originals. But, you know, there's not many artists that do Christmas originals these days that, you know, stay in people's minds. We've got, you know, many songs from the 80s and 90s that have become classics, but we don't really see that many artists making brand new original Christmas songs these days.
Can you just stay there a sec, Ollie? We've got a caller that wants to join in the discussion, the debate. Les from Cheshire. Les, welcome.
Hi.
Merry Christmas, Les. Yeah, very well, sir.
Yeah,
Thanks for
Merry
calling.
Christmas to you
Thanks for
too.
taking the time on Christmas Eve. So, best Christmas songs, worst Christmas songs?
Right. Well, I'm 65, going on 66 next year, and I've listened to every Christmas song that's going out there. And last Christmas, obviously, was one of the best Christmas songs ever. However, given the fact that I look at a lot of music...
Are we on speaker, Les? Could you just take us off speaker? Would that be okay? Because it's echoing a little bit. Would you mind?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Just one second.
Go on. I'll hum a Christmas song while you do that. No, I won't. Sing one, says Sarah. You really don't want me to do that. I did do karaoke a few weeks ago, drunk. There is video, apparently, which I have paid a lot of money to have destroyed. Anyway, OK, it's true. No, I haven't paid a lot of money, but I have asked for it to be destroyed. Les, have you managed to take us off speaker?
Yeah, is that better?
That's better, sir. Thank you.
Right, OK. So, like, I'm 65, going on 66 next year, and there's a lot of Christmas songs out there which I really like, and Last Christmas is one of them. However, there's a lot of new music out there as well. One of the Christmas songs that was produced 2 years ago by Katy Perry.
Katy Perry?
Katy Perry. And it was called A Little Christmas With You. Now, that's one song. And
why is it notable, Les? I mean, I'm not sure we've got it to play. We'll have to delve back into those elf-ridden archives in a minute. I think it was called Cozy Little Christmas, I'm being told, was it?
That's the one, Cozy Little Christmas With You.
Can you hum it?
Not really, no. However, the other one is, just recently, it's come out by Deep House called This Christmas as well.
OK, so this is all new stuff. Do you prefer the newer stuff then, Les?
Oh, fantastic, yeah, absolutely fantastic. This Christmas, the title song by Chill House, Deep House, Chill Funk.
Sorry, by who?
Vocal House.
By who?
Yeah. Yeah, it's Chill House, Deep House, Chill Funk, New Music, Vocal House. The finest of all.
Is it that? Yeah, it sounds like that's on some kind of compilation album, is it? But is it some kind of hip hop Christmas?
No,
thing?
it's just one single song that they put out there now, but they're going to compile it into other different music as well. But it's called This Christmas.
This Christmas.
And it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and what do you think about the older stuff? What do you think about Band-Aid, for instance?
Yeah, well, I've heard them all.
Do you want to hear it again?
Year after year.
Do you want to hear it again? Come on, we can't hear enough of Band-Aid. It's a classic.
That is a classic, yeah, but...
Stay there. Ollie, what do you think?
One question is, do they know it's Christmas when they're going through war?
Yeah, so, I mean, we can have the kind of political discussion about the appropriateness of the wording.
I don't want to.
Yeah, let's not do that. No. Les, just stay there for a second. You're a great caller. Ollie, what do you think of Band-Aid?
Well, I mean, it is a classic. It did a lot of good at the time. It raised a lot of awareness about poverty in Africa, raised a lot of money. So, you know, in its day, it did a lot of good work and stuff. I think it is quite a political song. So I don't think with everything going on in the world at the moment, people don't want to listen to politics at Christmas. They just want to listen to something chill and easygoing, and it gets them in a Christmas spirit. But, you know, in its day, it was a great song that did a lot of good, raised millions of dollars.
Do you think it's controversial to ask, do they know it's Christmas? Do you think that's insulting the intelligence of Africans?
Well, I mean, you know, if you go to Winter Wonderland in Hyde Park, you're not even allowed to say the word Christmas. The vendors were told, you know, to call it the winter market. So perhaps we should be asking, do they know it's Christmas? Because they're calling it a winter market now.
Nice. Yeah. Very, very, very good point. And, you know, Les, you still there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Les, God, this is fun. The one that we haven't mentioned yet, which is one of my all-time favourites, one of the oldest, and surely is Christmas itself. And hopefully this is now queued up because I think the producers know what I'm about to say, because it's the second but last one on the list that begins with Bill and ends in Crosby and White Christmas. That surely is the Christmas song of all time, isn't it? The one that stands the test of time. And Les, no disrespect to your picks in terms of those that have been written over the last 2 or 3 years, but I'm not sure anything that's written recently is going to be as good and as iconic in maybe 50 years' time as this is. Have we got it, guys?
Of a white Christmas.
So I've just been told it's the best-selling single ever, but I guess it's because it's about 60 or 70 years old. It was also reprised, wasn't it, with him and David Bowie? I mean, that was also pretty iconic. Yeah, Les, do you agree with that? Do you like that?
I like the one with David Bowie, yeah, of course, yeah.
Ollie, you're too young to remember who David Bowie is.
You know, actually, I do know who Bing Crosby and David Bowie are, but yeah, when they did that collaboration, that was incredible. And you know, Bing Crosby was also in the White Christmas movie, you know, the black and white movie, and that is also a classic. It's a beautiful, beautiful song, and I think it takes, especially for older people, it takes them back to when they were younger, and you know, gives them so many beautiful memories of Christmas.
Yeah. Les, you okay to stay there for a second? Because you're making a great contribution. Ollie, you're right for a minute. I'm being told that I should go to a break, really, but it's Christmas Eve, so I think we just kind of carry on, see what happens. No one's going to notice. I've just got a couple of texts here. Someone says I'm being too controversial by picking out the ones that I don't like. No, I just don't like them. I like some, I don't like the others. And Clayton in Dartford has said, you just mentioned Dean Martin. Yeah, I did in passing. Another one who died on Christmas Day. I didn't know that. I mean, what a date to die. I mean, that's nasty, isn't it? 1995, apparently that happened. Rumoured that he died of a broken heart as his son, a pilot in the United States Air Force, died in a training accident. That's horrible. Okay, so I've got another text here, actually. My local TGI Fridays has got a big track on the wall, complete with the trailer. I remember that being advertised on TV. That's Steve. Sorry, Big Track, if you think I've gone mad for a second. Big Track is the present I got twice at Christmas in 1979. I forgot about the trailer, Steve. So, yeah, what a deprived childhood I had. I might have had 2 Big Tracks, but I didn't have 2 or even 1 trailer. Anyway, okay, Les, look, thank you very much indeed for joining us, particularly on Christmas Eve. Hopefully it's been a bit fun for you. You like the modern stuff. I think I kind of like the older stuff. Ollie, before you go, what's your verdict then? What do you think really is your #1 pick for best Christmas song?
Yeah, I would really stick with Last Christmas because, again, it's a song you can listen to it a million times every Christmas and it just doesn't get boring, it doesn't get old. And, you know, again, the music video, it just, all the snow and the ski lodge, it's such a feel-good song. So, and of course, you know, George Michael was a legend and, like you said, he died just after Christmas, did a lot of good in the world. And I think it's a song that's brought joy to millions of people across the years. So I would say Last Christmas. And I'd probably agree with you for the worst song, the Shane MacGowan song. I think, you know, he can't sing, sounds like he's drunk in the video, and, you know, I'm not a fan of that either, so I agree with you there, Russell.
We need to try and get that clip a bit later on, I think, just to kind of prove my point that Shane MacGowan... I think what happens with songs, we hear them so many times over the years, we forget to kind of analyse them a little bit. And I think if we hear it later on, you'll agree with me that the guy singing, Shane MacGowan, no disrespect to him, the late Shane MacGowan, really cannot sing. Les, thank you very much indeed. Ollie, as ever, thanks for joining us. I'm sure you'll be back on Talk very, very soon. I better take that break now because I really am getting told off. This is Russell Quirk. We're having fun. It's Christmas Eve. Hopefully we're going to have a bit of a Santa update soon. I'll be back after this. This is Talk.
can't afford the rail tickets to get to see their families.
The rail fares, well, we've just nationalised the railways. The very first
But the fares aren't coming down, are they?
They will once the franchises return to public ownership, so that's a pretty big
That
bold
is not my understanding, but OK, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. About 35 minutes of this mayhem left on Christmas Eve. Then I'm handing over to Johnny Gould, who I've just seen through the glass. So he's here, which is great because it means I don't then have to do another 3 hours. Johnny Gould will be literally taking you into Christmas Day. We might hand over, actually, our secret weapon to Johnny with regard to the whole Santa tracker. He's looking at me very pensively here. But, Johnny, let me tell you, we have a secret insight into where Santa is. We can track him, and we have an expert on who we're going to be talking to in a second for the second time that will tell us where he is, where he's been and where he's about to be. And it's basically a warning to little ones that if you're not asleep very, very soon, he may well fly straight past you. So, yeah, good job that you're tuning into this so you can see where he is in anticipation of him landing with all those presents that you have wanted this year. Right, we've had a few texts as well. I'm told that the David Bowie and Bing Crosby song was The Little Drummer Boy, says Alan in Northampton. Thank you very much for that. Carmen says, I don't know if this is tongue-in-cheek or not, the Band-Aid song is totally insulting for us Africans. Well, Carmen, can I just say, with the greatest respect, you lot didn't say that in the 80s, did you, when all that money was being thrown at you to help you? I mean, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Yes, we know it's Christmas, and guess what? We're always happy regardless of our conditions. The money raised probably went to feed corruption anyway. We probably will agree on that, actually. And by the way, she says, I love Silent Night. That is a real Christmas song. I don't think it is. I think it's a carol, actually. But anyway, I stand to be corrected. Look, should we go back to our science, space and Santa tracker expert? Is he back? Let's go to Andrew Lound now, shall we? Andrew, so I'm sure you're busy tracking where Santa is. Can you give us an update, sir?
Yes, he's just over Sardinia at the moment. He was heading north. He's headed north from Africa, crossing over Sicily, and he's made a diversion now so he can cover Sardinia.
He's much closer to us now. Wow. So in that last hour, look at the ground he's made. He's basically covered the whole of Africa.
Well, he's covered sections of Africa. He'll be heading north and he'll have to turn around and head south again and then turn around and come up north again. So he's actually, bear in mind, he's travelling along the polar axis of the planet using the magnetic fields to actually get that speed up so he can cover it. And he does these little diversions. So he's now covering Sardinia quite well. He's in Corsica at the moment. He's just doing heading for Corsica. So, yeah, it's going very well at the moment. Really well.
Is there anywhere that he misses? I mean, you know, the far reaches of outer Mongolia. I mean, does he cover literally everywhere, Andrew?
The whole planet is covered. He covers the whole planet. He even covers the International Space Station now.
So wherever you live, so if you're one of these people that, you know, Ben Fogle goes and visits because you live in a little shack 8,000 miles into the Canadian forest somewhere, I mean, you've got kids, I mean, you can be rest assured that he'll visit at some point.
Always. Yes, never misses anybody. Children are priority here, and he makes sure everybody is actually covered. And bearing in mind, everyone talks about Santa on this particular night. You've got to remember the amount of work that goes on in the build-up to tonight is absolutely unbelievable.
Well, the logistics,
everything has to be put into place. You've got the as I said, you're using the special elf service, which is used to run ahead to make sure everybody's in bed.
Is that the equivalent of our national elf service?
Well, the National Elf Service, which we operate here, is used.
Sorry, I thought that was funny. No one's laughing. Sorry, I thought that was funny, Andrew. Sorry. Yeah, go on.
It's true. No, it's true. Absolutely right. We do have the National Health Service, which operates here to do that, and that's really critical across the country, making sure everybody's in their place, to make sure everybody's letters get to the right place, and really, it doesn't matter where you are, because you've got this network going on to make sure everybody...
So, Andrew, what's... I've been told I've got to ask you something in a minute, but what's the ETA? So I presume if he's zigzagging north to south, as you're saying, does he hit Scotland first before he hits the south of England, I wonder?
I think the plan is to come down from Scotland, yes, because usually it's the Royal Air Force scramble up from Lincolnshire to actually escort, to make sure the airways are clear for him to come through. So he'd probably be coming down from Scotland, down south, and then covering it that way. So at the moment, he's covering Italy. He's going to cross back. He's now heading slightly south to make sure he covers San Marino in 5 seconds' time. So, yeah, and we have 3.7 billion presents so far delivered.
Wow. And so your estimate from earlier on, which was about midnight-ish?
Midnight. Still looking at midnight, I think, is the target for when you're looking.
And the other thing, I guess, to ask is, what about weather? Does weather affect him?
Weather affects a great deal. So he usually flies above the weather, using the magnetic fields of the Earth to actually do it. So he's usually quite good at that. So then he has to dip down in order to get the presence onto target where he needs. But he has, as I said, he's got this infrastructure of the Alps which actually help do that. But he has to be careful of the weather very carefully. Yeah. But the sled, as you know, has the skis on them, so it can handle it if it's actually
he has to land.
Yeah, but he also has wheels that actually can drop down and therefore can actually do a more harder landing if he needs to.
And another technical question, Andrew, how high does this guy fly?
It varies. Once he's coming down over the city to actually do the work, he can come down 2,000 feet and then start doing the distribution. But as an average high altitude, he's usually at 70,000 feet doing the distribution.
So we shouldn't worry about him crashing into, a Ryanair jet on its way back from Madeira?
No, that won't happen because all the international airports have the flight routes, so they actually make sure flights are diverted away from his flight route so he's safe.
May I compliment you on your attire, by the way? We were talking about Doctor Who earlier, the Christmas special.
Yeah.
You look like a big fan of that. But I've been asked to ask you about and I'll tread carefully here, hopefully your answer will be relatively sensible, the naughty and nice list.
Oh, yes. Because...
You're an expert on this. Brilliant.
They told me I was going to do a talk, and they said, well, can you do anything exclusive? And part of the National Health Service in the UK, they said we could let you have a quick look at one of the volumes of the Naughty and Nice book, and here it is.
What, you've actually got a copy of the book?
This is one of the volumes of the Naughty or Nice book for the United Kingdom.
It's not from the 1970s or 80s. You're not going to tell me I'm in it, are you?
Well, everybody's in it. So if you want to call out a name, we can check who's in it.
Have you got Sarah? Sarah from Talk.
She's in the very nice section.
Very nice.
Yeah, she's got. She
must have been put in there. She must have been put in there before she was a producer on this channel.
Probably so. That's really good. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Petrie Hoskins in the naughty section, for instance.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. What about Julia Hartley Brewer? I mean, has she got her own section?
Very naughty section.
Okay, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Naughty.
I dread to think where Piers Morgan is.
Banned.
Banned. This is terrible. This is turning into a real kind of insult to Piers Morgan. We derided him yesterday for looking like the pigeon woman out of Home Alone 2, and now we're saying that he's banned from the Santa Naughty Nice
totally
list.
Crossed out.
He's brilliant at what he does, and I'm sure he'll take it all in good spirit. So, wow. Okay, so that's a genuine copy of the Naughty and Nice book. So
that's one of the volumes. Yeah, that's one of the British volumes. So yeah.
Yeah. Are there? What's the ratio of naughty to nice? Do we know? As in current kids now.
You're only looking at 1%, which are on the naughty list anyway.
And if they're on the naughty list, they can redeem themselves, Andrew.
They do redeem themselves, so that's usually okay. And the elves will do, especially. This is where the elves go on an hour ahead, and they have a look. And the ones on the naughty list, they have time to have a quick check. And you usually find that I think virtually nobody ever gets left out in the end. Of course,
unless it's Piers Morgan.
Unless it's Piers Morgan.
Who's probably. Do you think he just never had any presents as a kid? That might explain a lot.
Probably.
Mightn't it? Okay, fine. Okay, anything else to add before you go? And I really appreciate the updates. Where is he now?
I liked your idea of what was the best present, which I thought was quite good. That was interesting.
Have you had a best and worst?
Best.
Was your worst that cravat?
1974 Munich edition of Subbuteo. That edition has kept, because I'm a huge collector of Subbuteo, and it started at that point, Christmas Day 1974. So that was probably a best.
So you've got one of the first editions of Subbuteo.
It's one of the first editions of Subbuteo. Subbuteo goes back to 1947, but the Munich edition was a very special edition of Subbuteo. It was a fantastic edition.
That must be worth a few quid.
It is, but I've extended the sets beyond belief now. I just love it. It's just fantastic. In fact, I'm hopefully under the tree at the moment. There's going to be a Subbuteo present for me. So.
And is your worst present in the 2024 England Subbuteo team?
No, actually, I don't actually like to list things like worst presents, because if somebody has the courtesy to give me something, regardless of what it is, the fact that
so you don't do what my stepmother did and just throw it back at my father and say, "What the hell is this?" You're
No.
nice. You're one of those people, and I guess
No,
people fall into different categories when it comes to present giving and receiving, don't they? So
yes, they do. I can't do that. If someone goes to the trouble to give me something, I respect the act rather than the present itself.
But would you have to also put on an act to pretend that you appreciate it and like it?
No, I don't think I've ever. No, I don't think. I mean, handkerchiefs were a bit of a nightmare once, but as it turned out, I had a bad tooth bleed, and they turned out to be useful. So we actually reopened the packet early to block a tooth bleed.
So a bad present turned into
a good present, exactly. So.
And sorry, did you tell us what your worst present was? What would be your worst present?
The worst, I think socks. I don't like to be given socks because it's just so cliche, isn't it? Really, I mean.
Yeah, well, it is a bit of a boring present, isn't it? But okay, so before you go, where is he now?
Yeah, let's have a look now. He's Venice, Italy. In 1 minute 53 seconds time. So he's just passed he just did Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So yes, he's now really hitting Europe really hard at the moment. So those people are getting very excited for them.
Wow, OK, he is moving at pace. Wow, Andrew, look, thank you very much indeed. Our science, space and Santa tracking expert. That was absolutely phenomenal. Very, very interesting. Very, very informative. Indeed, we're going to take a break. Back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Last 20 minutes of the show. I'll be handing over to Johnny Gould at 10 o'clock, taking you through into Christmas Day. Might get him in here a little bit early, actually, just to wish him a proper Merry Christmas and obviously chat about what he is going to be talking about in the next 3 hours. We're just going to move gears a little bit and go to a slightly more serious story, which is, and I think James Max talked about this a little bit earlier on in his show, but it is something that we should talk about in terms of it being a matter of some concern, and that is that 1/5 of armed forces in Britain are not fit to fight. And that is quite an incredible number, isn't it? 20% of our armed forces basically could not be deployed if they had to be immediately. Obviously, the reality is as well that The armed forces, of course, are less funded now than they used to be, so £500 million lower in real terms. And actually, I'm going to talk to Philip Ingram about this, who you'll know as a former British Army intelligence officer, and also well known for something else, which we'll come back to. He will know that obviously our numbers in terms of armed forces members are significantly less than they were back in the 70s, 80s and 90s. Well, look, let's talk to Philip Ingram now. Philip, thank you very much indeed for joining us, particularly so late on Christmas Eve. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas indeed to you. Thank you. Let's talk about this. This is serious, isn't it? I mean, on the basis that we have now, about half of the troops in Britain that we had back in the early 1980s, I mean, certainly compared to 1984, when I think, yes, we had literally double the amount that we do now. And the fact that 20% are not really battle ready, that surely is a concern, particularly at times like this, where surely the world is a more dangerous place than it was even back then.
Yeah, it's a huge concern, and there's a lot of different reasons why troops are not going to be deemed completely fit to go to combat. One of the biggest areas is dental fitness. You know, the chief of the area that looks after the wider dental fitness across the whole of defence, General Sir Jim Hockenhull, turned around and said that the ability to get the dental fitness of the military up to the required standard is because that they're having to spend so much effort on getting the dental fitness of Ukrainian trainees up to their standard. It's all excuses. It's pathetic. You know, there's a lot that defence could be doing to make sure that people are properly looked after and properly brought up to the right level of fitness standards to be able to go off and fight when they need to, because our numbers are pathetically small at the moment.
Yeah, they are. I mean, would you agree with me? So it's about half the troops now that we had in the early 80s. I mean, that's given that our population, of course, has increased significantly since then, as has the world's. I mean, how on earth has that been allowed to slip through the fingers of our politicians and indeed the electorate? You know, it's the electorate that should be pushing back on this at every general election and saying, well, hang on a sec, where are our armed forces going?
It should be. You know, there's no votes in defence. That's the quote that keeps coming out. But actually, people don't realise that. You know, I've been at this game for over 40 years now, looking at potential threats from a global perspective. I've never seen a clear path to World War III until now. And actually, I can see several clear paths. And
well, Philip, sorry, that's some statement. So you've never seen a clearer path to World War III than now?
Correct. You know, and I can see several. You know, that's the really worrying thing. I am very, very worried about where we're going. And at a time when we've got a new government that's come in, won't commit to 2.5% of GDP to defence, but the reality is they've imposed a 2.5% cut on in-year money. That is a cut on training, that's a cut on looking after our accommodation, that's a cut on the welfare for troops and everything else. So it's a cut in defence in real terms. And we've got this bluff of a strategic defence review. You know, that's just pushing the decision-making off into the long grass. The decision-making needs to happen now. You know, what we're seeing is Sir Keir coming down the steps of an aircraft, waving a piece of paper saying, peace in our time. Well, that happened in 1936. And it didn't end up well after that, and it's not going to end up well now unless we start to see major investment. And it's not just money that comes in, it's reform of defence to make sure that they spend that money in a more efficient way, because they don't at the moment. You know, if Santa had applied the same methodology that defence is doing, he wouldn't be delivering the presents he's doing at the moment. He wouldn't be travelling at 650 miles per second and completing 822.6 visits per second as well.
Yeah. Wow, you sound as adept as our previous expert, actually, Andrew Loud. But I guess there is, though, is there an argument that when it comes to defence, it's not as cut and dry now, it's not as binary as the number of troops that we have to have, because it isn't the 70s or the 80s anymore, because we fight wars in a different way. You know, I read somewhere today, you know, for the first time you've seen Ukrainian battle robots deployed against Russian troops. I mean, I'm sure you probably read that as well. So, you know, is there an argument here that if the government actually were here to defend themselves, which unfortunately rarely do they do so on this channel because they know that they get chewed to pieces, but would they say, look, it's just not as simple as that. This is not about per capita troops. This is about a broader more holistic approach to defence. But then I guess, Philip, you might say, yeah, but they're failing at that anyway.
Well, they are failing at that anyway, and you know, you're right. It's not about a per capita, but the one thing that the Ukraine conflict has shown us is that we're back to First World War levels of fighting and First World War levels of statistics. You know, the Russians are losing 1,500 to 2,000 troops a day. You know, we cannot sustain that. The British Army is 70,000 strong. You know, take the 20% out that are not fit to fight. We're down to less than 50,000. We're talking, you know, we've had quotes of Chief of the General Staff saying that the British Army would last less than 6 months. The British Army would last less than 10 days. Wow. That's the difficulty with the statistics that are out there. And we need to recognise that. We need to start to build up mass. Mass has got a value all to itself, and we need to have that capability and that capacity that's there. We need to have it in our frontline troops, but we need to have it in our the reserve capabilities that are there that are trained to come in, because you lose your frontline troops very quickly indeed. Yep. We don't want to learn that lesson once we're starting to fight, and if you prepare that, you reduce the potential for us having to go to conflict. If you don't prepare for that, you're increasing the risk that we're having to go to major conflict.
And so back to your point about 2.5% of GDP, which is something I think the Conservatives had committed to. The incoming government said before they were elected that they aspired, I think was the word that they used, to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, as and when the time was right, correct, appropriate, whatever mealy-mouthed language that they chose to use at the time. Do you have any faith in this government, without asking you to be too political, because obviously you're not necessarily a political commentator, but do you have faith and confidence that this government might actually increase and sustain 2.5% of GDP as British defence spending?
I spoke to a frontbencher who had defence inklings before the general election happened, and is linked into the party that's behind the new government. They said they've got no plans. They weren't going to plan anything. And the reason why they didn't plan anything was they didn't want to be held to anything. And they started plan once they came in. That gives me no faith whatsoever. 2.5% isn't enough. It needs to be 3%, 4%, or 5%. Because if we get into the easiest case scenario of what happens in Ukraine, we come into a new Cold War. The last Cold War, we spent 6 or 7% on of GDP on defence. You know, if we spend 3%, 4%, 5% now, we can try and mitigate that. So it's spent now to save in the future. The government's not behind that. The government has already put the kibosh on the recommendations that are coming out of the Strategic Defence Review. I know the first draft has been put in front of the Secretary of State for Defence, and he sent it back again because it was saying above 3%. It was saying about 3.5% needs to be spent, and that's not going to happen.
And Philip, just before you go, I'm being urged to go to a break because we have to do these things. But Donald Trump coming into the White House, he's already expressed his concern at NATO contributions not being enough, and said that basically he may withdraw if he has to be the country that takes the NATO burden on the broadest shoulders. I mean, how do you think that plays? I mean, presumably that's going to insist, really, by way of that kind of backdoor, that we have to spend more to keep up with Trump's diktat.
Yeah. I don't like Donald Trump as a person. If you asked me 6 months ago, I'm very anti-Trump. But actually, if you look at it now from a logical perspective, I think for NATO, Donald Trump is going to be very positive. He will force nations to go to 3% or 5%. He will see the current government in the UK as the Democrats, and therefore the anti-Trump government that's there, and therefore we're in for a hard time.
And that in itself is not a bad strategy when it comes to a message to our enemies that we're about to spend more money. Philip Ingram, thank you, and a very, very Merry Christmas, by the way.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
Thank you.
And to the whole team at Talk.
Indeed, thank you very much indeed. Right, we're going to take a break. Back for the last few minutes after this. I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk.
heard from young people saying they can't afford the rail tickets to get to see their families.
The rail fares, well, we've just nationalised the railways. The very first
but the
bill
fares
that
aren't
went
coming
through was,
down, are they?
No, they will once the franchises return to public ownership, so that's a pretty big
That
bold
is not my understanding, but OK, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm sad to say I'm Russell Quirk just for, what, another 6 or 7 minutes. Then you've got Johnny Gould who's just walked into the studio. We'll be coming to him in a second. But much more importantly than Johnny, of course, are you lot, callers. Wayne from Lincolnshire has picked up the phone and dialed 0344 499 1000. Wayne, thanks for calling.
Good evening, Russ, and thank you for making them 3 hours so kind.
That's all right, pleasure. Well, thanks for taking time out of your Christmas Eve to call us. I bet you want to talk about Christmas songs.
I do. Let me just give you my favourite. Last evening, I give you my favourite song. You disagreed with me, though. It was Wallace and Gromit, but hey-ho.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, but yours wasn't the worst. We had all sorts of ridiculous suggestions, frankly, Wayne. But let's hope your Christmas song is more sensible.
Well, I don't know if you have heard it, but it came out in 1975. It was Johnny Mathis. It's When a Child Was Born.
Yes. I do remember it.
Beautiful song.
I did exist in 1975. I do remember it. When a Child Was Born. Wasn't it part of a movie? Was it a movie soundtrack? No,
for me, I didn't know that.
No, I'm asking. It's just in the back of my mind. It was something to do. Well, maybe I'm thinking of something else. But
you used to have to get on the keyboard.
So we haven't got a clip. So I'm going to have to ask you to hum it, Wayne.
Good. Well, it might be a bit difficult because I'm laid down with nuts in my mouth, but I'll give it a go.
Well, now that's an image that I'm not sure we want. Although we are past the watershed. Johnny Gould thought it was funny. You're lying down with nuts in your mouth.
Well, that didn't come out right, but...
No, you think?
No, it's in worse. Get your head out the gutter.
You started it.
I'll give you a couple of bars, shall I?
Go on.
A ray of hope flickers in the sky. A tiny star lights up way up high. All across the land, dawns a brand new morn. This comes to pass when a child is born.
Do you know what? That deserves a round of applause, Wayne from Lincolnshire. That was absolutely fabulous. You deserve a career in music, I think. Even Johnny Gould was here on backing track beatbox, I have to say. What do you think about that, John?
I quite liked it. I would like
Quite liked it? It was fabulous.
I'd have liked the 4/4. I was playing the bass in 4/4.
So, Wayne, I think Johnny might agree with you in terms of your nominations. Do you agree?
It's a lovely song. Being a Midlander, I'm a bit biased towards Slade and Wizard.
Yeah.
I wish it could be Christmas every day. All those little kids there from Perry Bar singing in the local accent. And then, of course, Nuddy and the gang sung that all-time song. I like the Donny Hathaway song, It's Christmas. It's a really sort of Motown guy.
I can't even think what that is. Are you going to start singing now? Are we allowed to do this, by the way? Are we breaking some rules or something?
Oh, probably.
Oh, well, yeah, what about my song? Do I have to pay for that?
Do you have to pay? No, I think we might have to send you a cheque. I think you're going to get scouted, Wayne. I think you're going to have Simon Cowell on the phone. I mean, no buzzers here. I mean, look, golden buzzer, I think that was, Wayne.
Oh, come on, you're being so kind.
No, I'm serious. If it was rubbish, believe me, I would tell you. I think everyone knows that listens to me when I do a show. If it was rubbish, I would be the kind of... who was the other guy? Do you remember? Was it Nasty Nigel?
That's right. And
American Idol.
And failing Simon Cowell, his brother would be interested.
Who? Nicholas?
Or Tony. He might sell his house.
Right. Wow.
Me blush.
So, Wayne, before you go, I've got to ask you, like I have everybody else, what's the worst Christmas present you've ever had?
Oh, well, I tell you, it was crutchless knickers. So what I did, I
Steady
give
here.
them to the wife.
Well, I can see the finger over the dump button.
No need to dump.
Steady,
There was
Wayne.
crutchless knickers, so I give them to the wife, and she managed to get all the way home. She didn't fall off the broom once.
Right, okay. Well, I think we need to leave that right there. Wayne, you're a star. I think you're a better singer than you might be a joke teller. Wayne from Lincolnshire there, everybody. Another round of applause. Wasn't he fantastic? On Christmas Eve, I mean, what a delight. That's our gift to you. Everyone watching and listening is Wayne from Lincolnshire. Johnny, right, so a proper hello.
Hello, let's do straight face.
Shall we start again?
Yeah.
No, but I don't think we need to be particularly formal. We've done a few serious stories,
Yes.
but we've done some real fun ones. So I've got to ask you the same, really. So, yeah, best and worst Christmas songs.
Well, I like, as I mentioned, the Donny Hathaway song I've discovered this year is a lovely, lovely song, kind of Motown feel. It's Christmas. I do like the Slade song, and Noddy keeps on saying, rather injudiciously, I make 300 grand a year when it goes on the radio.
Say, how much money have they earned?
And it's my pension. And of
300
course,
grand every year?
Something like that.
Just him or the whole band?
And yes, it's across the band. And then people like Chris Rea keep stum about it and earn probably even more, that Driving Home for Christmas song, because they just keep playing it. Not forgetting those one-hit wonders. I think they were called The Waitresses.
The guys behind the glass here were saying that they think that's one of the best songs.
Really? It is a good song.
Is it?
She don't half talk, though, the lead singer. It's just...
I like...
It's baffling, the lyrics.
Again, you know, we had this whole debate yesterday about Christmas Eve. I just like stuff that is, you know, absolutely, deeply, properly, emotionally Christmassy.
Yes.
And that's why, so my picks were the likes of Last Christmas and Bing Crosby and so on. So, yeah, but maybe I'm just an old romantic.
And there's a song that hasn't been played at all this Christmas, and that's The Little Drummer Boy, Bing Crosby and David Bowie.
We just talked about it.
Right,
So we talked about Bing Crosby. And we talked, we haven't played it, but that is another classic,
great song.
albeit modernish, I suppose.
And brilliant David Bowie, the way he played
fabulous.
with everybody in his career.
Really, really good. And fancy putting those two together. You imagine being in the room if those two were together.
Beautiful.
I mean, two absolute icons. Worst present you've ever had?
Worst present I've ever had. All right, we're off to the after.
Hopefully the person that gave it to you isn't listening.
I got a key ring from my children, and they meant very well because they bought it from the Christmas market for £1. And it was so nice. It was a key ring, and on it said, "World's #1 farter."
Are you now reconciled with your children?
Yeah, I talked to them again. I said, "I'll tell you what, my darling, can you get me something else?"
And what did it say on it?
"World's #1 farter."
Oh, it wasn't German for father?
9. I'll give it 9 out of 100.
So what are you going to be talking about? I should ask you.